Welcome, everybody. We're just going to be getting the show underway in just a moment here once the backup stream starts going. So I want to thank everybody in the chat room who's been in here beforehand and passing your comments around as well. Bear in mind, this is a listener-supported broadcast, so patreon.com/Vinny Eastwood is the place to go if you want to support the show. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And my very special guest joining me now is Casper Leitch from Time for Hemp. Casper, good evening.
Was it Thursday? Happy Thursday. How you doing?
It's fantastic. It's a Friday here in New Zealand. We have a little thing called, I don't know, time zone difference or whatever. But yeah, good evening and good morning and good day to all indeed. So we're going to be talking today about hemp and cannabis, and in New Zealand, just to catch you up, Casper, we're doing a little bit of a cannabis referendum about whether or not we should have it legal, and they've got a whole legal framework and stuff like that up for grabs, but of course it's a non-binding referendum, so even if the people do vote yes, whichever successive government wins the election that's happening at the same time can just do pretty much whatever they want anyway. So I'm just wondering, what's the difference between cannabis legalization, decriminalization, and just flat out prohibition? What are the positives? What are the negatives of each of these?
Decriminalization just means that if you're arrested with it, there's no more arresting with it. That's it. I mean, they don't really support the business aspect of it. They want to keep it underground. It would be like, well, you're not supposed to smoke cigarettes if you're under 21. But now they've decriminalized that, meaning they stopped arresting for it. But you don't find cigarette shops marketing to 18-year-olds popping up everywhere. All right. Legalizing it means not only have you stopped arresting, but now you are doing commerce and you are issuing licenses so that people can set up dispensaries, or like here in Oregon, people are able to do recreational purchases. And so then, it also means that farmers can grow fields of hemp and fields of cannabis sativa and cannabis indica. And it's really interesting. When I first came to Portland a long time ago, it had been legalized when I got here 9 years ago. A buddy of mine, Paul Stanford, had gotten an alert that his growing house had been busted into, and the police notified him to hurry down to his warehouse. So Paul hurried down to the warehouse. When he got there, that was surrounded by police. There was 2 dogs that had been led into the grow house. The perpetrators were finally captured and brought out. Then the greenhouse lights all came on so everybody could see better, and the greenhouse doors came up. You can see there's like 300, maybe 400 very tall marijuana plants in vegetative growth under all these beautiful green, these lights, these grow lights. And the police just stood there and talked to Paul like, every day's a new day. They were talking in front of tomato plants or in front of zinnias. They didn't care. And when they got done taking Paul's report, they asked if they could have a copy of the surveillance camera so they could identify the perpetrators. They shook Paul's hand and thanked Paul for helping to make it legal in the state, because he was one of the people who did that, because it freed up their time to chase after people who were doing break-ins, gun robberies, and, more important crime than just chasing after a plant. So that is the difference between legalization and decriminalization, and it is a big difference.
So in terms of the on-flow effects from that, because there's time that's being saved through police, money being spent elsewhere? What about taxation? What about retail? How do these things actually work? Because there's a lot of scaremongering going on in New Zealand at the moment. Very well-funded billboard campaigns about the dangers of cannabis and what if the children got their hands on it and things like that. Whereas you're in a state that's legal. Did any of those terrible, horrible, no good, very bad things actually happen?
Actually, no, it even made it so that it was more difficult for children to have access to cannabis because now, in order to make a cannabis purchase, a legal cannabis purchase, you have to have a state ID verifying that you are legal age and one other ID as well. Two forms of ID before you can even enter fully into the dispensaries. They have like little waiting areas where you walk in and you're greeted at the door, like when you go into a strip club or a bar or someplace, there's somebody there to check your ID before you even walk onto the premises. So you have to be of legal age to make a purchase, just like you do in making a purchase for alcohol. And so it cuts back on children having access to it. And it also cuts back on the cannabis being cut with various drugs that street users would do to make it seem more potent when really it was cut with some kind of chemical. And the medical aspect of it as well, it is tested. So that when a patient goes into a dispensary to make a purchase for back pain or for arthritis or for glaucoma, they are actually able to find the proper strain that will help them with their particular ailment. And then they're also checked for organics, make certain that you haven't sprayed them with pesticides and there's or any type of thing that might cause harm to somebody if they inhale. So it makes the smoke safer for people to consume. And it makes retail even easier to handle. And the state taxes that have been raised in the various states that have legalized it has been overwhelming. Colorado is now using the abundant amount of money coming in from the taxation of cannabis to help with the homeless population in their state. And Illinois is doing using their money to help with kids who are sick and need access to medicine and can't afford it. So the taxes that's being raised in the various communities is being used to help on so many different levels that the federal government is not helping. And it also makes the states more independent of the federal handouts. The federal government oftentimes will say to the states, if you don't comply by this law, we're going to cut off funding. Well, if the state doesn't like that law, they can now say, we don't care. We're making billions of dollars in tax revenues from cannabis. We don't need your funding. Go away.
How is that changing the political landscape? I mean, is it just business as usual when it comes to the politics?
Not anymore. Not anymore, because the candidates realize how stupid they look when they open their mouth and say, marijuana is bad, marijuana is horrible for the kids, marijuana will kill you, marijuana is a health problem, because anybody can do a Google search, and any Google search will show you that there's, like in Israel, they use cannabis for anywhere from 100 to 300 different elements, and they're going to be using it for more. And they can prove that smoking it also makes you live longer because it cuts back on heart attack and stress problems like a stroke, and it makes your blood circulation flow better. And so people who do a Google search just on the health aspect of it are enlightened. And then we are able to do a Google search on the effects of hemp being reintroduced into communities like in Kentucky and California and Nevada, where they're now growing acres of hemp for oil and for clothing and for food. They're creating jobs. They're creating an environment that's safe for people to grow up in because they're creating a good community where there's a strong taxation and strong jobs to rely on. And they're creating their own products here at home, so they're instilling more self-pride. When you work your fanny off to create something and it turns out good, you're pretty proud of it. And so there's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot of wonderful things that are happening just by re-legalizing hemp and re-legalizing medical marijuana and re-legalizing recreational use. The recreational use taxes go to help feed the poor, help get the homeless off the street. The the money that comes from the taxes on the medical help goes to provide medicines for kids who can't afford medicines. And the money that's raised from the hemp grows helps to provide more jobs for the community. So any politician that opens their mouth and says, marijuana is bad, hemp is bad, it's like getting up and saying 2 + 2 is 5 and the sun's not out at noon. People laugh at them, if not to their face, definitely behind their back. And it also discredits anything else they say. If I walk up to you and tell you marijuana is bad, and I don't want to also put a stoplight in at the corner of Main and 5th, well, there might be a real justifiable reason for not putting in the stoplight at Main and 5th. But I'm not going to listen to that because you just lied to me about cannabis. That or you showed your ignorance, one of the two.
Yeah, it was like that with me. I was watching a YouTuber from New Zealand the other day, and he says the reason they and I like him. I like a lot of what he says about a lot of things. And he says, the reason they want to legalize cannabis in New Zealand is because it makes you dumb. And I was just like, well, hold on a second, man. And I gave him a big rant about it. And I'm not sure if you could really kind of open people's minds to a large degree, but by the crowd disagreeing with them, when they start getting shouted down, when they start getting laughed at because it's just so obvious that they're not telling the truth or they're not right on with the facts, that's about the time when they start to at least shut up about it, which is the one thing I ask. If you've got something bad to say about cannabis or hemp, at least shut up about it.
And there's only two reasons why any candidate would ever say anything bad about cannabis. One, they don't know the truth themselves, and they are just parroting what they've been told for fear of saying anything else would cost them a vote. Or, two, they're being paid by Big Pharma or somebody who has a vested interest in keeping this plant outlawed. Because there are a lot of companies that have a very strong vested interest in keeping cannabis and keeping hemp outlawed. The liquor industry sees a drop in sales when cannabis becomes legal. Pharmaceutical companies see a drop in sales when cannabis becomes legal. People are no longer using the side effect medications that's shoved out by Big Pharma, when they can grow their own medication in their backyard for a whole lot less with no side effects and find a better effect. And, it cuts back on the private prison industry, which means security guards aren't being hired. And that means that people who put in alarms aren't being hired. And people who install prison cells are not being hired. And they have a vested interest in keeping this outlawed because a private prison in our state, if they put a private prison in the state of Oregon, they have the state of Oregon guarantee that prison will be 98% full all the time. If it falls under 98% being full, then the state has to pay X amount of dollars to the private prison until that prison is 98% full. Which means it's very important to keep cannabis outlawed so you can shuffle off people to your prison to keep the private prison industry happy. So if you want to see why it's outlawed, you want to see who are aligning themselves with keeping cannabis outlawed, open your eyes, follow the money, honey. It's real easy to see. It's the evil people who like locking up kids who don't have much of a future after they've been locked up for a bag or two.
Yeah. And I'm one of those kids. I think it was the age of 20 when I got my possession for supply conviction. And now apparently no country will let me in. They might let you in if it's personal use or something, but not if it's for supply. So that kind of destroyed my future, and it wasn't the cannabis that destroyed my future. It was the law. It wasn't the cannabis that busted through my door and lied to me and made up evidence and did all those things and threatened to send me to jail for up to 8 years for a first offence. It was the law that did that.
And even the local enforcement, excuse me, local enforcement, local courts, they depend a lot on cannabis being outlawed. Because if a police officer pulls you over and you got $3,000 on you, and he finds a joint, he can make the assumption that you made that money from a marijuana sale and confiscate the money, and until you are able to prove that you legally made that money, the state keeps it. That's called forfeiture, and it sucks here. And also, when they pull you over and arrest you, it means you have to go out and hire a lawyer. So the defense attorneys they love that. And then the prosecutors make a whole lot of money because there's a lot of reason for them to show up and go into court. The judges never have an empty docket. So all the way around, it even makes the cafeteria workers happy because they get time and a half because there's so much going on, and it makes everybody just thrilled, right? So, I mean, straight up, stop me if I'm lying.
Well, that was the other point as well. I mean, there's so many on-flow effects from this, so education's being affected. I mean, can you imagine where the human race would be today if 100 years of lies had not happened? If 100 years of oppression had not happened?
I'll tell you where it would have been, where it's about to be now. Here's what's going on. There are some really cool things happening now that it's becoming legal. There are a lot of cannabis farms popping up now. I can tell you that. I'm going to go out to Arizona soon, and I'm going to oversee a pot farm. But we're starting it out in a different way. In Arizona, to grow cannabis, you have to have a license. It costs you $75,000 to the state to get a license, and it takes a year's wait. And you got to cross your fingers after you put the money in and hope you get the damn shit. And if you don't get the license, they still keep the money. Yeah, you heard me right. They still keep the money even though you don't get the license. Nonetheless, we are putting ourselves in a position to where we can fight that without any problem. We can wait it out and wait it out and wait it out. But I tell you, this lighting on me is horrible. And we're going to start out with growing hydroponic tomatoes and lettuce and mint and strawberries. And we're building 10 acres. And then we're going to let the strawberries and the mint sales, because then they have co-ops that guarantee to buy your hydroponic fruit and so on, right? So bigger guaranteed sales.
Yeah.
And we're going to let that money generate the money to pay the $75,000 for the damn state. And when the state says we can start growing cannabis, then we're all set. We got the greenhouses up.
Well, we want to go back to that as well, because what's the threat of monopolization? Because currently the alcohol industry and pharmaceutical industry, I believe, are heavily trying to invest themselves within the cannabis market while and before it's going legal, whilst at the same time funding the opposition to keep it illegal in the same time, so that if it, heaven forbid, does become legal, they can wind up getting a monopoly over it, and then at that point they can force out all the independent growers, and then they can ratchet the prices back up, and then they'll control both drugs and marijuana, or both alcohol and cannabis. Is there anything like that going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. People are playing both sides of the fence, and it's frustrating because it also is causing more and more taxation where it shouldn't be. And oftentimes when a product gets to the customer's hands, it's been taxed 7 times. From being grown, from being tested, from being processed, to being incorporated into another product, to being packaged, to being put onto the shelf, to being sold. Boom, you got about 7 different taxes. And it's sad in some ways. What they've done is they've made it still the black market has sometimes a better product for a better price.
I think that's because you've got independent growers who, for them, it's not a business, it's an art, right?
Right.
You've got essentially a natural cottage industry in there. And in my opinion, in terms of legislation anyway, it should just simply become part of the Bill of Rights. It is your right to grow, to use, to sell, that kind of thing, as you would any other plant, whether it be a lettuce or a capsicum or a cannabis plant, for that matter. In fact, more people have died from eating lettuce than have died from smoking cannabis, I hear.
Well, and I have no problem with it being inspected if it's being sold to the public. I mean, I like it when my tomatoes are checked out before they're put into ketchup or they're put into a pasta sauce to make sure that it doesn't have rat droppings in it or somebody didn't contaminate it with some kind of chemical. I mean, after all, I can't test it. It's coming from a place that I'm supposed to trust, a corporation that's making this product. Okay, so if you are a farmer and you're selling hundreds of thousands of bushels of tomatoes, your tomatoes should be tested. And if you're making product out of tomato, your product should be tested because I'm going to consume it. But if I'm just growing it in my backyard and going to sell it to my neighbor, I shouldn't have the government interfering with anything.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The smaller the scale, the better it is for the community, I think.
Right. Right.
I mean, what's happening nowadays is essentially we're talking about the corporatization and monopolization of everything, not just the cannabis and hemp industries when it's made legal, but just big players out there. Like in New Zealand, for example, we've got like Burger King and Pizza Hut and McDonald's or whatever that are all owned by the same company, restaurant brands, and so it's hard to know where one company begins and another ends. But what you can be certain of is that those big chain things are not owned by the mom and pop operators.
Right, and they're even getting, if you said the ones that you named too, they are getting into. I mean, I watch TV sometimes and I'll see an ad from Taco Bell or McDonald's focused directly at the stoner who's looking for a munchie. And so they're looking for our market, all right? Then if they're advertising to our market, they should support our market. They should put their money where their advertising dollars at. If you're going to advertise to the cannabis consumer, then you should be donating to NORML. You should be donating to an organization that's trying to end cannabis prohibition, and you should be showing up at the marijuana marches.
But the thing is, there's no money in that. There's no money in donating. There's no money in speaking up for the oppressed and things like that. But as soon as the oppressed aren't oppressed and they've got as much weed as they want, there's plenty of money in that because then you can just market to them and there's no problems associated with it, is there?
No, and I have to be honest, this particular movement is crap. I don't know how else to say it. If I was an activist for abortion, I don't care what side of the fence, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, doesn't make any difference. I would have donations out the yin-yang. I'd have corporate donations. I'd have private donations coming in envelopes left and right. People would throw money at me when I went to the grocery store. All right. Now, when you tell people that you are trying to end marijuana prohibition, you might get $1 or $2. But they usually wish you good luck because it doesn't seem important to them. They don't recognize that by ending cannabis prohibition, you're making medications available to people who need it so that they don't have to be a criminal to get their medications. You're creating jobs by stimulating the economy, by allowing us to take this plant and produce fiber out of it and plastics out of it and all kinds of other great products out of it that we can make at home. And we're producing oil here, so we're not having to be dependent on people overseas that want to take our money after we buy their oil and use our money to kill us, right? So I'm thinking it's a no-brainer any way you look at it. You need to end cannabis prohibition and let the farmers go back to growing it. It's the only thing that's going to make any country independent, any community independent, and everybody on the planet strong.
What's happening with the community itself? Because as far as I know, a lot of people they don't know their neighbours. They don't have a contact with the police chief or anything like that. I mean, does that changed since prohibition has been taken over? Has there been a difference in the way that people relate to each other? Is it palpable?
Oh yeah, absolutely. First of all, the police have said that they've had less domestic disputes. There's less fights breaking out. And the police are actually happy to be able to focus on crime that's real crime. And where I used to live in Indiana, it was, of course, outlawed cannabis. If you had just an ounce, they haul you in. So if somebody broke into your house, held you at gunpoint, and you called the police, not only would the person who broke into your house get arrested, well, so would you. They found a pipe, they found a bag, they found more than $200 in the house. Jeepers, you're probably making sales. In Oregon, if I need a police officer and I've got 4 pounds in my house, I don't give a shit. If I need a police officer, I can call the police officer and know that when they show up, they're showing up to help me, not arrest me. And that makes their job easier still. And it makes communications with the community easier. And it makes people get along a lot easier. We have more trust in our officers. And they have more trust when they show up at the scene, too. That we're really in need and we're going to do what we can to help them, help us in that situation. Mm. Not where in Indiana, once you get the guy out of the house and arrested, I'm running around the house fucking up all the evidence by moving this around and that around and hiding my bag and hiding my pipe. So by the time you get back in to check for fingerprints and shit, I've moved it all around. We make their job easier because we don't care if they find 4 pounds. Get the motherfucker's fingerprints, get the guy in jail, and I'll ID him. Thank you for showing up. You rock.
Well, I was thinking that there probably would be less need for police in general if that's the case. I mean, have police recruitment numbers gone down?
The marijuana crime rate was a fabricated crime rate. I mean, in the sense that there's always crime. And the police really had other crimes to attend to besides chasing after a plant. And there was a lot of crimes being neglected because they were busy chasing after a plant. So no, there's just the same amount of crime. It's just that now they're going after real crime and they're not going after people who are playing with the plant. Big difference.
So are the police now a lot more frightened when they actually turn up to real crimes with real people that might actually hurt them?
Well, I imagine that too. I imagine that if I was a police officer and knew that I was no longer being chased out, I was no longer going out on a mission to arrest 4 or 5 pot smokers, and I was really going to go out to arrest, 12 gangbangers, I might be sure to have backup and my vest and anything else that I can think of.
Well, it's the adrenaline rush I hear is what's really big for that, and that's why SWAT teams became so popular. Busting into somebody's house, get down on the ground. Man, it looks like a lot of fun, right? Unless, of course, you're on the receiving end of it, in which case, not quite as fun. Especially if your dog gets shot or your children get traumatized or something like that. But at least that's not happening anymore with cannabis. But there's still so many more things, and that was the problem I felt with the cannabis activism when I started off in this course maybe over a decade ago. Is there's so much more to the world's wrongs than just cannabis, and sometimes we get bottlenecked into it. And we don't understand a lot of the other threats that are kind of ubiquitous around us, all the poisons in our food and water and the radiation in the air from our Wi-Fi and all of that kind of stuff. But we focus on this one, and because it's a really important one, maybe the key to freeing the planet, and that's not a bad idea to a large degree. But of course, once that's over, there's always going to be another fight, isn't there?
Right. I also noticed that you've got the arrow on your computer on my nose.
Ah, yes, yes. Doesn't worry. That doesn't come out on the stream.
Well, I did not know. On my end, it looked like I had a hole in my face, and I couldn't figure out what it was, my camera, or if there was just a smudge on my computer, or what it was. Well, when you get high, you're just not sure, right? Okay.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about that's how maybe cannabis should be in politics to a large degree, because it's just not fun. I've seen lots of political debates, and they're not fun people. They're drunks. All right, that's what a lot of the politicians are, who are yelling and acting childish in the House, aren't they? They're just alcoholics. And I was thinking, one thing a Cannabis Party member said. He was asked, what makes you stoners think you can run the country? And he said, well, you alcoholics haven't been doing a very good job, have you?
No kidding. No kidding. And you're right. It has been, the liquor industry does quite often donate heavily to a variety of candidates to make certain that certain laws do pass. I mean, there was a time, too, when the liquor industry did lobby the politicians heavily when media was in the process of outlawing at least heavy liquor, whiskeys and bourbon advertising. They still allow beer. And there are a lot of communities now that have dropped the drinking age down to 18, when for so many years it was 21, which is really a better age. But when you drop it to 18, oh my God, the amount of money they make, right? Hello. So, but the marijuana industry, there isn't like a big lobby. I mean, first of all, it's kind of hard when you're outlawed and you can't start growing. Now we're starting to have a lobby, but it's still small. But, a cannabis lobby is not showing up in Congress or in the Senate anywhere near to be out and defending the rights of people who are behind bars and people who need medication. And we need that. I was even surprised to find out that organizations like MPP and Normal do not lobby. I don't know what they do. I think they're mostly like public relations anymore. And they do show up sometimes to help with initiatives, but we really need, in any country, a lobby going on. The World Health Organization is still trying to, on some level, keep some controls on cannabis and hemp. And the World Health Organization also recognizes that by having hemp as a viable farm product, you can keep off famine from a lot of communities. I mean, there are communities all around the world who are being hit by hurricanes and by earthquakes and by droughts. And this plant grows in a variety of climates quickly. And you can produce hemp porridge that's healthy for your body. You can produce hemp foods that are great for your system. And it's been proven that in history that this plant actually did keep entire civilizations from starving out. So, we can be feeding more people. We can have a more nutritious planet. And we can be working more towards a green goal. I mean, if we were using cannabis, hemp, as a fuel, if you spilled it in the ocean, so what?
I think that's another interesting point to make. How many products do we use in our daily life which could instead be done, be made with cannabis? I mean, like if we just looked around wherever we are right now and just think whatever we're sitting on could have been made of cannabis, whatever we're looking at, the screens that we're doing, they can be made with cannabis resin and things like that. Recently somebody discovered that you can make hemp batteries and other things like that. Who knows if we could make microchips or something, and maybe all this toxic stuff that normally goes to landfill could in fact be made of hemp, and then when it goes to landfill, it's actually good for the land.
Well, and if hemp was legal, then you wouldn't have politicians making what I call feel-good laws. Here in the state of Oregon, they finally outlawed the plastic bag. God forbid you go to a grocery store and you walk out of a grocery store now with your food and your canned products in a plastic bag. It either has to be a paper bag or one of those little satchels that you pay 25 cents for or $1 for. no more plastic bags. But that's kind of stupid because if you look at the bag of chips is made of plastic, the plastic around the cake, the plastic wrapping around the cola, the cola bottles are made of plastic. I mean, everything you're walking out of the store is made of plastic, saved in plastic, put on the shelf in some form of plastic, and even the paper labels that they put on the cans can be made of hemp and save our trees. And so, I mean, so when you outlaw plastic bags at a grocery store, it's like farting in the wind. Who cares? I mean, who cares? It's silly.
Well, they actually banned plastic bags here in New Zealand. And you're right. And it was just yesterday that I had that thought. It was like going into the supermarket shopping with my wife in the middle of coronavirus panic season where everybody's bought out all the toilet paper. And it only occurred to me why they did that is because when you get the frickin' coronavirus, you get the sniffles. And about 98% of people survive it. So, you know, let's stock up on Kleenex. Might have been the rationale there. But everything is wrapped in frickin' plastic. What the hell have they achieved?
And they also talk about how we have this island of plastic in the middle of the ocean that's supposed to be the size of Manhattan or some nonsense. I don't know. I mean, it's just like it's supposed an island of plastic. And you read every day about how some tuna or dolphin or turtle was pulled up out of the ocean and it had like 5 pounds of plastic in its stomach. And we've got somebody who invented a great way to get plastic out of the ocean. I got a great way of getting plastic out of the ocean. Stop using this shit and start using hemp. Hello? I got a great way of taking care of the plastic problem on the island. Stop using plastic and let that be a great big island of hemp. Oh, it wouldn't be because it would biodegrade before it became an island. Hello? And all the paper that you're bitching about on the labels, I'm thinking it would biodegrade faster if you did it in hemp. Hello? So are you people who are running around saying, I want to save the planet, I want to save the environment, oh my God, we got to outlaw marijuana. You have your head so far up your tuchus that you have to cough to just see.
Yeah. It's a problematic difficulty when you're trying to talk to somebody who is so far removed from what reality actually is. Because it does take some study. It does take many hours of study just to even get a basic idea of what cannabis and hemp can do in its various attributes, doesn't it?
It does.
So unless people are willing to sit down and educate themselves in such a way, it's a factoid here or there, I think, is best we've got.
But you see, the big problem is if we really solved the problem, I mean, if we really solved the problem and stopped making plastic, we could. And we could create all these things without even missing a heartbeat. We could produce it all quickly. We would have to use hemp. But in doing so, then all these oil companies go out of business. These plastic making companies have to convert all their tools over too. And there's a variety of transferring of wealth that's going to go from the people who currently have all that money. And it will go from their pockets into the farm communities. It will go into the states and into the local communities where the local jobs are at. Instead of having big oil barons and monopolies on a variety of products, you will then have a variety of businesses springing up, creating the same product everywhere around the world, and not out of plastic. And anytime it goes to the dump, it will biodegrade within 3 to 5 years, not 30 to 50 years, if then.
Mm-hmm. I think people need to understand that the whole environmental movement, to a large degree, if it is not incorporating hemp into any of their sustainable development goals, they're not interested in environmentalism at all. They're interested in political power and control, period.
2 speakers I can think of from our country. One still alive, one dead. T-Bone Pickens, or T-Boone Pickens, whatever you want to call him, was working for the windmill industry, and Al Gore was fighting for the planet, he had his big environmental turn, his movie that he did it, and Inconvenient Truth, right? If you listen to Al Gore's speech, or if you listen to T-Bone Pickens speak, you will realize that they are saying everything that Jack Hare said about hemp in 1990 and 1989. T-Bone points out that with all this wind fuel, we can quit using oil. That's true. And Al Gore kept saying, we got to get off of foreign oil. We got to find some other way to project ourselves into the future on some kind of energy other than petroleum. And that's true. But neither one of those smart billionaires said anything about hemp because they don't have a vested interest in anything that involves hemp. In fact, all their businesses would lose a lot of money if hemp were legal all around the world.
If you're talking about a financial loss being incurred specifically because somebody is capable of using hemp instead of your product, you have a financial incentive to prevent that product from getting to market, don't you? Is that not very simple?
That is. So between those people on that end, and like I said, you got the private prison industry that gets put out of business because you're not going to stock the prison full of illegal people smoking marijuana. Oh my God, now what are we going to do? The prison's only half full. Jeepers. And, so I mean, there's a lot of industries that are impacted by ending cannabis prohibition, ending hemp prohibition. And they're not impacted in a positive way. There are a lot of other industries that are impacted by the legalization of cannabis hemp in a positive way. The farm community, people who are producing mom and pop operations, and there's a lot of great products that can be made on a local level, a lot of great jobs that can be made here at home, here in our country, without having to import a bunch of stuff for a lot less money than importing. And so on that level, jeepers, we're going to lose money from point A to point B. But it's like taking the money out of the 1% and putting it into the pocket of the 99%.
Okay, well that's not ideal for those in charge. Well, I was just wondering, what part does it play in a greater freedom movement to a large degree? I mean, let's say Hemp for Victory was a video released by the United States government so that US farmers would grow hemp for the war effort to build ropes and things of that nature. And it seems to me that if you're going to be fighting against, oppression and scumbaggery and the fake banking system and the false flags and whatever, you're going to need some resources. Maybe hemp would be a part of a war resource to a large degree. Maybe people who are growing hemp are going to be funding people like me and the propaganda arm. Who knows?
Well, it is actually what made America free from the colonies. Is because we were able to produce enough of those products from this one plant that we did not need to import all that from the British Isles. And we were able to also back our dollar with cannabis. There was a time in America where you could pay your taxes with cannabis because it was that valuable. It was as valuable as gold. They recognized you were growing gold. And there have actually been a couple of banks that have been kept strong because of cannabis farming and hemp farming over the many, many years. And it was the use of hemp that allowed our soldiers here in America to be able to have clothing warm enough to sustain the sub-zero temperatures when they were out on the battlefields. And it was the hemp gauze that lasted while they were healing through their wounds and their injuries. It was the hemp paper that they wrote on to send their love back to their family at home. It was the hemp oil in their lamps that kept their lights on at night. It was the hemp food that they ate each day that kept them strong. And that was just the tip of the iceberg.
Wow, man. Maybe there's a really, really good reason to keep hemp illegal. You don't want a revolution overthrowing your power base and kicking the bankers out. You know,
I
hey
hope I'm not
boss,
talking too much.
you know, it's like, hey boss, we found a plant that can basically do anything. Okay, what happens if our enemies get a hand on this? Well, they won't need us for anything. Okay, well let's make it illegal then.
Basically, seriously. And that's why Thomas, in our country, people don't realize that Thomas Jefferson and Adams and I think even George Washington, they were the first illegal smugglers. I mean, they were the first marijuana smugglers. They went overseas to deliberately get strong hemp seeds from strong strains to bring back to our country so that we could produce those crops to produce the oils and the paper and the clothing that we needed in our country. So the first marijuana smugglers was Jefferson and Adams and George Washington. And there was a reason for that because they knew it was going to set our country free. As long as you could grow this thing and make all those things out of there, we don't need to bother the Queen and they can go screw themselves. And we're not going to pay them any taxes. No, we don't. We're done with that. We're going to build our own country. And we did.
Well, it's interesting because there's very much that sort of revolutionary spirit among the Maori community here in New Zealand, and a huge amount of support for the marijuana community amongst that Maori community, that kind of thing. So imagine the two are intertwined, because I did think for a while, like let's say we did, what Iceland did, kicked out the bankers or whatever. What happened directly after that is Iceland got infected with a whole bunch of new bankers, and now it's back to the way it was. So how do you get them out and keep them out is, first of all, you kick out the bankers, and second of all, you set up the hemp. But then, of course, there's war, invading New Zealand. It would just be this interesting thing. Oh, there's this radical dictator, Vinny Eastwood, he's very bad. He's taxing the people. He's bringing out his la 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 la. And they'll just make up whatever the hell and then justify the invasion of New Zealand or something, It'd be like Kosovo or something. Who knows? They're just white people down there, they're not even Australian. Don't worry about it.
People don't realize that had it not been for hemp, we would not have discovered that the world was round. America wouldn't have been found because cotton did not make a strong enough cell to last for a very long journey. And cotton and other fibers that were used at the time for rope didn't really last long underwater and didn't keep you anchored like you needed to be anchored. So just alone for the rope and for the cells to keep the ships up and going, the cargo going, the transportation of the intercommerce at the time going, they were relying on hemp cells and hemp rope. Had they not had that, they couldn't have done all that they've done around the world. So it really is a strong plant. There's a reason why it's outlawed. And if you just follow the money, it's easy to see. And now that it's coming back from being outlawed, you can see the communities around where it is legal grow and become strong and prosper. There was a time where people sucked into the bullshit where the casinos would say, we're going to come into your community, put up a big hotel, bring in gambling, and it's going to bring a lot of industry into your community, and it brought poverty. Now when people hear we're going to bring cannabis into your community and it's going to bring a lot of wealth into your community, they're dubious. But ironically, it really will bring a lot of wealth into your community, a lot of jobs into your community, a lot of stability in your community. It cuts back on crime. There's no stupid arrests. I mean, anybody being arrested is because they really did pull a gun on your grandmother, not because your grandmother gave your grandson a joint. Hello? Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, there's a lot of good that comes from just ending this prohibition, and makes the police jobs easier. It makes parents stop lying. I had somebody say to me the other day, I walked by a trash can and I saw a marijuana plant had been tossed into it, and I was with my 7-year-old daughter. What am I supposed to say to my 7-year-old daughter? I said, I guess the same thing you tell her about a tomato plant. He goes, no, I mean, because it's illegal and you can't. So, well, if you're worried about the recreational use, what do you tell your daughter about drinking liquor? I mean, it's just a plant. You're just making it more than what it is. And if you stop doing that, you stop getting artificially excited about a plant, the whole world will calm the fuck down.
I think that's
Pardon my French.
another point really to raise here, and thank you for fucking saying it. Is there needs to be a lot of more calm around the issue. People are getting worked up. People are getting very angry. They're saying mean and hurtful things, and just calm down. There's no need to get upset.
Right. It's just a plant. And I really, first of all, when a parent says to a child, "Oh, Santa Claus is coming tonight," it's like, first of all, you're lying to your kid. You're going to have to deal with that one. And when you tell your kid the Easter Bunny brought you chocolate candy, come look at this again. When your kid's 19 or 12, you got to live with that one. When your kid says, "Why did you lie to me?" If you tell your kid marijuana's bad, and then you tell your kid that hemp is bad, the next time you tell your kid anything, they're going to think you are bad. You are ill-informed. You are stupid. You are not a point of reference. You're not someone that they can go to for any help with their homework, for any assistance, for guidance down the road in their path in life. In fact, they kind of embarrassed that they're stuck with you as a parent because you're so ignorant and you won't educate yourself to the truth. Wow. Is that what you want your kids to think from age, I don't know, 8 to the time they hit 40? It's on you.
And there's a big problem that I have with that is because the largest quantity of the knowledge that I've obtained has been given to me by my elders. They've been around a lot longer, they've seen a lot more stuff, they've listened to their elders as well, and they're passing that stuff down from generations sometimes, and you can learn a lot more. So if you are driving that wedge between the young and the old, you're preventing the young from getting really educated in some way, shape or form, specifically because you, the old person, has refused to educate yourself.
Right. Right. So, yeah, I have a real problem with it from start to finish. I mean, if you're going to tell your kids that it's bad, then what you need to say is, "This is my personal opinion. I've done a Google search, and there's 15 different studies that say I'm wrong. But in spite of that, I'm going to cling to my beliefs. And until you are no longer living in my house, you can't smoke it." Well, you set the rules. It is your house. And if you want to treat your kid that way, well, then go for it. But for God's sake, don't lie to your kid. Just tell them straight up. It's your opinion. And you're wrong. But hey, you don't want it around you, so don't bring it around you. And then you're being real. Then when you tell your kids something else, they might listen to you.
Well, the irony there is it's the elders that suffer the most at the hands of cannabis prohibition simply because they're the ones who overwhelmingly need it and use it as a medicine.
That's something that surprised me, too, as I've gotten older. Because I come from the generation where they were hell-bent that you smoke it, you're going to die early and so on. And every day I wake up and there's something new that cannabis helps. So there's something wonderful that cannabis does for the body. It helps with Alzheimer's. You know, if you smoke it, I mean, if you actually smoke it, it cuts back on the possibility of dealing with Alzheimer's and the horrible effects of it. That's a wonderful thing. I'm looking forward to a happy old age. I don't want to deal with Alzheimer's. It cuts back on having to deal with pain if you rub it onto your body for arthritis. If you smoke it, it cuts back on heart attack or stroke. I don't have to deal with having a heart attack. I just love that concept, not having to go through any chest pains. Wow, that works for me. And every time I find something new that smoking marijuana, it's like, no wonder I'm living as long as I am. I should have been dead 40 years ago, but cannabis is keeping me alive.
And you see a lot of people like that as well.
And I don't mean to interrupt here, but I want to point out cannabis does save lives. It really does save lives. When I was going through my divorce, and my ex-wife was trying to play games with me and my kid in my visitation, someone offered me for X amount of dollars, take her out. And I sat down and smoked a joint and thought about it and realized I'd have to meet my maker, and decided, no, I'll deal with it in the courts, and said, thank you, go away. And because I smoked marijuana, she is still alive.
Yeah, it's like, take her out. What, for a beer or something? Yeah.
So marijuana does save lives. Trust me, I know.
Well, that's what Bill Hicks said, is marijuana doesn't make you dumb or anything. You do everything you normally do just as well. You just realize it's not worth the fucking effort.
Exactly.
Life could be worse. Going to the chats now, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start monitoring the chat a little bit. Sorry, a lot of you've been in there cranking away. Well, we've got James Huckvale, Bruce Collins, Vampiro in the super chat, and we've got Sam BDB, Swampy McGee, Bubs Cat, Luna, and a number of other people on the main channel chat here. We've got 56 people watching on the main channel. We've been going for about 55 minutes at this moment, and we have 23 people watching on the backup channel. Now, for those of you watching at home, bear in mind you can only super chat on the backup channel. Now, there is a link to that in the description if you're watching the main channel there.
Well, I would have had better lighting. Let me interrupt. I would have had better lighting had I known we were going to do the video aspect of it. I mean, jeepers, you caught me looking like a human being.
Oh, well, nothing could be further from the truth. Let me see if we've got... if there are any questions in the chat, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to sing out. Just make sure you put a big caps lock question before your question, and we'll go to your comments in a minute. First comment here, Vinny. I love you, Vinny, in a gay way. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be honoured by the non-opposite sex. We had medical weed here for the past 20 years before it was legalized. It becomes very commonplace. People smoke it at the bus stop, says Daniel Becker. Yep. Where are you in Daniel Becker? Rika, the hopeful voluntarist, wanted to do something. Rika's been posting the links in the chat as well. Peter Rouse is asking, why was hemp regulated to start with in New Zealand? I can actually answer that. The reason why hemp was regulated in New Zealand is because under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1975, I believe, they classified the cannabis plant writ large as to be classified under the Misuse of Drugs Act rather than the recommendations which were put forward at the time to instead put hemp and cannabis medicine under the Medicines Act. Now, the basic difference was that one was criminalised and not being able to be used, and the other one would have been allowed for medical use. And there were, in fact, stipulations for medical use within the Misuse of Drugs Act if the Ministry of Health granted an exception. And in nearly 50 years, not one exception was granted. So yeah, that was that, and hemp was basically just tied in with everything. That's the answer to the question there. James Huckvale says a friend of Vinny is a friend of mine. Thank you very much, James. Daniel Becker's from Berkeley, California. He was talking about people smoking it in the bus stops, just becoming all over the place. And that's another thing as well, when you look at this legalization and drug use and things like that. Like I smoke weed like all the time. And the reason I do it is because perhaps I've been traumatized severely, haven't managed to deal with that trauma yet appropriately, and the cannabis helps to treat said trauma so I don't turn into a horrible person to those around me. Just in general. That's kind of the main reason I do it. because when you've got complex post-traumatic stress for being busted for weed, it's nice and ironic and quite fun to actually smoke weed to help you from the from the incidents that it'll all cause you. It's just that just one of those things. Oh man, feel nice and tired. Feels
Let me
like
just say two things.
Yeah.
I realize that I look like a Muppet in heat.
Yeah.
Right? All right. And you are listening to American Freedom Radio. If you need to find the truth, you can find it here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Thank you very much, Casper, for that. And that reminds me as well, Danny Romero from American Freedom Radio is booting the network up, doing live shows next week, I believe.
Awesome.
It's going to be good. We'll get back on air and actually be doing some live on-air shows, taking callers and that kind of thing, working through the boards and what have you. It took a while to get his computers replaced and what have you.
I'm not really sure what I am doing. I've got my own network. I don't know. You knew that, right?
Yeah.
And you can find Time for Hemp on iHeartRadio. We have a 24-hour a day, 7-day a week live stream, right? And for the longest time, I was doing my own broadcast from my own website and other shows like Danny does. When I was like you, I was part of the stable of programming that Danny had at AFR. And then the path in life that Danny was walking had a sudden detour that has now brought him back to where he's rejoining the broadcasting world. But during that detour, a lot of programming that was part of that stable of shows that Dan had found their own homes. And I had a large enough audience where I began broadcasting through Time for Hemp, .news now. It used to be .com, but it's now .news. And doing my own programming. And now we're doing videos. We do a newsletter, and we do blogging and all that. And but the marketing in marijuana has really changed, and it is also really difficult to find sponsorship for podcasting, because there is a brand new podcast that somebody's shitting out every hour on the internet. I don't excuse my language, but it's just true. I mean, you can find at least 6 new shows that somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to start a new series." And so everybody's looking for internet dollars. People who own internet businesses realize that banner sales is passé. I mean, once you click on someone's banner, you've clicked on it. If you want to go to their website in the future, you can type it direct. You don't need to hit some damn banner. So banner sales dropped, and advertising on podcasts dropped. And it became very difficult to sustain broadcasting work on my own network. Thank God I retired, and I got a retirement now, and it keeps me strong. And I'm going to be able to continue to privately fund Time for Hemp until I can figure out what to do. But I don't know what to do with it at this point. There's a large archive of material that I've produced that we want to maintain and keep. And I've taken some of those shows. I did a lot of shows, right? Let's say that, remember like the show I did with you as an example, where we talk about the important things of HARP. I would keep that in. But when you're talking about you're going to be down at an expo on Thursday signing books, I wouldn't keep that in. So I take the audio of that out, and then I animate it to avatars and talking heads and create Time for Hemp tunes to help keep that content viable and new and fresh and available for a new generation. And I'm doing the same thing with the audio. I'm recutting that, so it all sounds new, so that people like Michelle Rainey, who's passed, or Jack Hare, who's passed, someone listens to an interview that sounds fresh and new, they'll listen to it. And they'll discover that message that Jack wanted the whole world to hear that he had, or what it was that Michelle wanted to share with everybody before she died of cancer. So I'm doing that type of work now with my own little section of the internet, trying to scratch my head and figure out what to do with my situation. So we're still broadcasting. We're on iHeart, Tumblr, SoundCloud, iTunes. I still put out a newsletter each week. But I haven't been able to figure out what to do about sponsorship at the moment. So we're kind of like going sideways. How's that?
Well, it's the same thing I've actually discovered is that if you're in this fight or any good fight for the money, you must be freaking retarded, right? And that's the end of the story. I mean, like I ended my show that way the other day because I am doing my shows for the money. You know, like $20 super chat here, or maybe a $10 donation through the PayPal there.
Right.
That keeps me alive. I realized that, oh my god, I am doing it for the money. Oh my god, I am retarded.
Well, after a while, you do stop to think because here's also, I mean, I've gotten a little bitter. And I don't know. People tell me I need to reel it in some, but I've had a couple of people contact me and tell me that they've got a great book that they wrote about cannabis, and they're happy to be a guest on my show, or they're starting a brand new marijuana dispensary in Colorado, or a new hemp oil company in Berkeley, and that they would be great guests on my show. Am I interested in having them on? And the answer is no. I don't want to be part of your public relations campaign and not get paid for it. You come onto my broadcast and I give you a soft interview question where every question is like about your product and about you, and no hardball questions. And we put a spotlight on all your work in the cannabis movement, and we put a spotlight on your book or your product. And when we get done, you've got an hour infomercial that you didn't pay for, and I didn't get paid for, and you didn't even make a donation to me. I mean, I used to start asking guests, "Oh, can you make a donation of $25?" And it was like, "Oh, are you kidding? I don't pay to be on somebody's show. You want me on your show, you'll have me on your show, but I ain't going to pay to be on your show." And I'm thinking, well, you're coming on to hype your book. So now I only have doctors, patients, a lawyer or two, somebody who's going behind bars and is trying to keep from going behind bars. And if you want to hawk something, I tell you straight up, every time you mention your website, it'll cost you $50. And if you don't want to pay it, I'll edit it out before I release it. And if you want to put a spotlight on your book, if you mention it, that's $100. And if you don't pay it before I release the show, I'll edit it out. And suddenly your 1 hour interview will be cut to 20 minutes. Bitch, I don't care. I'm not doing this for free anymore. I'm tired of it.
You're absolutely right, and I've come to the exact same thoughts on it to a large degree, and that's why I ask for donations during the middle of the show, and that way I can actually monetize the show. So when anybody is coming to see their favorite guest or whatever who's on the show, they're always getting this donate to Vinny Eastwood, PayPal, Patreon, Kiwi Bank, Super Chat, whichever way that you can, and get generally just enough to survive, right? Just to go down there. And occasionally,
I've noticed my stats. Anytime I turn in, check my stats on iHeart, there's at least 10,000 or more listeners. And I just think to myself, if all you fuckers just gave $4.20, we could be doing all kinds of great programming. We can have all kinds of great guests on. We can be doing great, videos of putting spotlights on the cannabis movement and farmers that are growing it. We could be doing so much. Well, anyway, so maybe I am a little bitter. Maybe I am a little cranky. Maybe I need to reel it in. This is the first time I have ever aired it publicly because it probably sounds like a temper tantrum or a rant, but after you spend 20 years of getting up and just hoping somebody will advertise on your network and crossing your fingers that someone might donate, you finally just say, well, because one of the cool things about Time for Hemp that people, I would think, would find interesting, Vinny, is that not only am I on iHeartRadio, I'm on Roku TV. And I can easily get on Amazon Fire. Now, that means I can do a simulcast, a live simulcast, if we had sponsors to pay for the crew and the equipment for hemp expos, marijuana music concerts, medical marijuana seminars that would educate doctors and lawyers about the cannabinoid system, I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things you can do with a global broadcast with a good team. And we can do a simulcast globally, but not without sponsors.
And that's the thing as well. I mean, I've had to reduce all of my costs down to as close to zero as I can possibly get, and that's just so that you can survive, because it's not something that you can do really as a career, trying to help people and do the right thing. It's something you can do that allows you to survive, I think, and that's about the best that you can hope for in this game, I think.
All right, so now that you heard me throw my little hissy fit, did it sound like I was a temper tantrum, and did I have my head up my butt, or do I have some good points?
I think you're voicing what almost everybody has been going through. Who knows how long this game's been played out? Maybe thousands of years, where people have been helping humanity as a gig and not being rewarded adequately for it, for them to actually even just feel appreciated. Just feeling appreciated, at least, that would be something.
Jack Hare. There's a lot of people in your audience who will know Jack Hare. Those who don't, please Google search him. He wrote the book "The Emperor Wears No Clothes," considered the original Bible of the cannabis movement. When he died broke. He had a book that he sold for $15. When he would go and do speeches at universities and at hemp expos, inevitably, a lot of people would ask Jack for a free copy of his book. I mean, after all, I drove you from the airport, or I helped put up your tent, or I helped put together the stage. Well, they didn't realize that $15 a book also paid for Jack's airline and his food and his clothing and his ability to pay his bills back at home while he was at the university talking to your crowd. And so for him to give out the books, he was giving out his money. And when Jack died, after he helped educate everybody about how wonderful hemp is for paper, fiber, fuel, and medication, when he died so broke that his friends had to pitch in and buy his coffin and buy his funeral plot and buy his tombstone, because he did not have a dime when he died. And yet he changed all of this. Jack Hare really put all of this in motion. Had it not been for Jack Hare and his book, you and I wouldn't be having this chat right now.
We literally
about what's
wouldn't.
going on in your country.
We literally wouldn't, because I was introduced to Jack Hare's book, and that was kind of my opening to the cannabis movement, and then my cannabis movement was my opening to activism in general, and that was my opening to talk radio, and here we are.
And so that is really a frustrating thing to see. There is not a retirement for activists. When you work at General Motors, or you work for a hospital, or you work for anybody, normally you get some kind of pension when you leave, even for the military. But when you go out and you try to change the world and you're an activist, you better make it just like a part-time job. Just do it for a few years and go do something else if you plan on having anything other than a heartburn as you get older.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lifetime thing for me, because my motivation is very, very simple, very basic. I'm afraid, and I don't want to get exterminated. Right? That's it. That's my motivation.
Well, what part of mine is, when I started working for Jack, he made me hold my hand up and promise to be a hemp activist until I was 65, dead, or it was legal all around the world. And I took that oath in front of Chris Conrad and Captain Ed and Dennis Perrone and Dr. Todd McArea and a few other people that, if you don't know, you might Google search. And I have now kept my promise. And everybody who's come on as a guest on my show, I always promise them that I believed that they were like a superstar. Their message that they needed to end hemp prohibition, to me, was more important than somebody like, I don't know, Justin Bieber telling me he's got a brand new album out or something like that. And so I'll do everything I could to get their message all around the world into as many ears as I could possibly get it into. So I've tried to keep my promise to all of my guests that they would be heard by as many people as I can make listen. And I try to keep my promise to Jack that I would be a hemp activist until I hit 65 or died.
Yeah. And how old are you now?
I hit 65 this year.
Well, there you go. but you're still a hemp activist, so I guess you're on the death row. Yeah. And that's the thing as well. How much knowledge have you been passed on by all the people on your show?
I mean, it's amazing. And now that I'm going through it again to find information to reshare, I'm oftentimes blown away by the information that I hear again. That's one of the benefits I do like about the internet, is that we've been able to maintain a great archive of information. And over the years, I've had everybody on as a guest, from Mark Emery and Jack Hare and Eddie Lepp to people from Australia and Europe and Canada. And we've watched the cannabis movement grow. And as you wade through all of my shows, you hear like Mark Emery talk about how he was first arrested and how they've hired, the next show, how they've hired a lawyer. And the next show, how they're doing a television show about him. And the next show, how he's getting ready to be extradited. And then the next show, you hear Jody talking instead of Mark because Mark's been extradited. And then you hear Jody talking about how she's got to fly back and forth for 2 or 3 years. Then suddenly you hear Mark's released again. And it's like, and you hear all of that as it played out over the years by just wading through my archives and listening to all the programming. So, I mean, there's a lot there that I am doing what I can to maintain. So I don't know if anybody out there is interested in making a global cannabis movement grow to a global cannabis movement.
Yeah.
Reach out to timeforhemp.news, right, Vinny?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do at the moment. I know I'm sitting on a lot of voices that have talked about the need to end cannabis prohibition. And a lot of voices in my archives are dead and gone. And as I go through and re-edit and revisit, it's emotionally difficult for me at times to listen to people like Gateway Galbraith, Jack Hare, Michelle Rady, and people like that, and get their message out and make sure that it gets out nice and strong and it doesn't get lost in all the white noise on the internet. So I'm trying to figure out how to preserve it, maintain it, reshare it, and it's more than I can handle. I can tell you that. It's gotten to be, Time for Hemp used to be just a little TV show that we did on community cable in California. And it debuted, it was the first community cable access show to debut in 19 states, 21 cities. And then it became the first community cable access show to go national. And because Mark Emery and Chris Bennett and people over in Europe began showing it, it became the first community cable access show to go international. Yay! And then when I was working with American Freedom Radio, we got a larger audience. And then when it was no longer to work with American Freedom Radio, I thought iHeartRadio was just going to pick me up as a 1-hour spot. And they gave me my own network to where I can broadcast 24/7. And I thought that was cool. And then Roku started, and I became one of the first Roku producers. And next thing I know, I'm on Roku TV. And all of a sudden, I went from being a community cable access show to I can do simulcast, I can do broadcasting all around the world. We're a newsletter, we're a blog, we're on all these platforms like Facebook and Tumblr and Pinterest and Reddit. And it's just amazing all the people I can reach on the internet, but I just don't know what to do from here forward. So anybody out there who has any solutions or is interested in helping to see this network grow and get stronger, reach out to me.
That's the other thing as well. It's the when victory vanquishes you, you know, when you're in a place where it is legal, are you as determined and as, desperate for the fight as you would be otherwise?
Well, I am, only because of how long I've been in it. And I like the idea of being able to continue broadcasting after the war is over, to be able to show now the new companies that are springing up and the new products that are being made and all the new jobs that are being created and all the wonderful economy that's being stimulated and all the horrible things that are stopped, like the arrest and all that. So, you'd like to be able to put a spotlight on all the things that you said this would happen if it became legal. And now that it's legal, you're able to go, see, bitches, I told you this would happen.
Maybe that is what you need to do with your archives. Have cut a 1 hour show together of the predictions that have lined up with reality. It would be called the I Told You So Hour.
That would be great.
Yeah, time for being told I told you so.
I also want to let your listeners know, because of my friendship with Vinny and because of my long time association with Vinny, I am this relaxed and straightforward in my off-the-cuff responses.
Yes.
Had there been anybody else doing this interview, I would think 4 times before I answered in any way.
Yeah, which takes 4 times as long when you've taken this much time for him. Wait. Okay, because the other thought I was having is, right, there's some broader implications here, but it's where the rubber meets the road that's essentially important, because there's the political chicanery, there's the BS in the media, there's all this kind of thing. Attrition is the thing that really, really strikes me out. How many people have you known that have come into this movement and then just bowed out? Because there are very, very few who come in and don't leave until they're dead.
Well, no, that's a lot of people have bowed out only because of economics. But you never stop unlearning the truth. I mean, the thing is, once you learn this, until you die, you always say it. There's a parable called the cave that is very well known, and I'm not going to go into it completely. But once you learn that, someone tells you like the background that's behind you is green. They tell you, no, it's red. And all their life they've been taught that it's red. Well, once they learn that the background behind you is really green, then they're all excited and they go back and tell their other friends. And when they tell their other friends who are looking at a green leaf, saying, look at this red leaf, the person who learned the truth goes, no, that's not red. That's a green leaf, right? So once you learn the truth, you cannot unlearn it. That's the problem with it. You just cannot unlearn it. So once you learn that cannabis hemp can make 50,000 products and someone says it's a horrible plant, you look at them like they're stupid. Once you learn that cannabis, when you smoke it, makes you live longer and helps cut back on problems with Alzheimer, and they tell you that it's a horrible thing to smoke, you look at them like they're stupid. And I don't care if you're 28 or if you're 82, reverse the numbers. Once you learn the truth, anytime anybody says something that's not true, and especially when you get older. I mean, when you get older, I don't know what it is, but whatever it was that was in your brain that made you bite your tongue and shut the fuck up, now that you're older, it just spews out of your mouth and you can't help but you just said it. So when someone says something stupid, you go, no, oh no, oh no, oh no, I don't think so. Look, you're stupid. You need to educate yourself. And you just stand there and give them fact after fact after fact. And I'll be on my grave. I'll taking my last breath and let some doctor walk into my emergency room and say something about, I've been working to outlaw cannabis before I came in here to work on this patient. I would be going as he's taking my pulse, you're a jackass. You're an idiot. You need to educate yourself.
Yeah. Till you die. To the bitter end, mate. And that's the bitterness as well. We've got James Huckvale here in the chat room. He says, I wish I had a bunch of money to prop Vinny up with. I help him on Patreon a little. Vinny's the real deal, man. YouTube fucked him. And right here, ladies and gentlemen, that's the super chat that you can click on if you want to show your support for the show. I do really want to thank my very special guest, Time for Hemp's Casper Leitch, for joining me today. What is it about cannabis that makes people devote their lives to it, even though they might not see successes?
Well, this plant, this plant is really strange. I mean, if somebody told me that this plant came from outer space, I would tell you you're probably right. That makes more sense to me. only because. Now, I got to take a minute. Only because I've grown it and I've been around it when it's growing. All right? Now, two things. It's almost as if it has its own aura. I can walk by tomato plants and not even know they're there. I can walk by strawberries and not even know they're there. I can walk by tulips and roses, and unless I smell them, I don't even know they're there. If I walk by a cannabis plant and I don't even lay eyes on it, I know it is there. I know it is there. I have been in a greenhouse where it's time to water the plants and they're kind of just a little wilted. And then they all get watered, and within 10 minutes they stand up and they almost like want to hug you and love you and say thank you. You can spot a cannabis plant from 100 feet. I cannot pick out a tomato plant unless it's blooming, or a strawberry or a rose bush from 100 feet unless it's blooming. A cannabis plant, at one glance, just by checking the peripheral of the environment, I can tell you, I saw 3 cannabis plants, motherfucker. We're in the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about this plant, I do not know how to explain it, but it really does have its own aura, its own being. That's number one. Number two, it is almost as if the creator of the universe said, these two-legged idiots called humans are going to need clothes, they're going to need oil, they're going to need food. They're going to need all kinds of great things. They're going to need medicines. And I got to provide it somehow in a natural way without having to pop down there every day and go, hi, I'm God, drink this. Oh, I know. Let me make a plant. Because this one plant is so amazing. It can create all these medications. I don't mean just one medication. I mean many medications. And it creates all kinds of fibers, from smooth as silk to rough as canvas. It creates all kinds of plastics, cements. It creates all kinds of things that we need as creature comforts. And if we only had one plant, nothing else, just one plant. If all the tomatoes died, if all the roses died, if everything else died, but this one plant, humans could survive. They can eat, they can clothe themselves, they can also provide fuel and oil and paper and all the things that they need for their creature comforts to move on to the next generation. And no other plant can say that. And no other plant grows in so many places as does this plant. This plant can reclaim the desert and turn it into a green, lush place. This plant, when it was outlawed, we lost over 10% of our topsoil. It kept our topsoil in place. This plant kept our earth together. This plant kept us together. No other plant is like that. So that is why this one particular plant has such a tie to the human race. It's all the way back in tombs. You're finding it in the bellies of dinosaurs. You're finding it in the seeds in the bellies of rabbits from 100 years ago. You're finding it in tombs of pharaohs. You're finding it in underground cities that we unearth. Because everywhere we go, we've survived because of hemp. Only until somebody in the 1930s in America said, you know, we can make a lot of money, bitches, if we outlaw this fucking plant.
Yeah.
Did we stop using it? Up until that time, it was used as part of human history, survival, and growth. That's why you find hemp leaves in statues by Columbus and by famous scholars and by kings and famous leaders. That's why you find hemp leaves on their swords and hemp leaves on their belt buckles and hemp leaves in their earrings and hemp leaves on their cups that they drank out of, because they realized it was a wonderful, beautiful plant. And then when all is said and done, I don't care who you is, when you get done smoking this, if you did not believe in God before you smoked it, you definitely believe there is a God after you smoke it. Because it's such a wonderful feeling. You just know that you found heaven.
What is the spiritual alignment with hemp? Because even, I believe it was Lord Shiva in the Indian ancient stories, he was walking along and he became very, very tired, and he came to rest at the bottom of a plant, and it had a sweet smell, and he took some of the plant and ate some of it and smoked some of it, and he started feeling really great and amazing and declared that this would basically be his sacrament. So, we're talking about going back to the roots of religion itself, not to mention the very first crop in human history was indeed a hemp crop. So the reason why we had industrial agriculture is essentially downlined to hemp, indeed. So let's think about this. If you're against hemp, does that mean you're against civilization and being civilized in and of itself, both of the body, the soul, and the mind?
Well, I would think not. You're just all for you getting rich and everybody else being broke ass.
Which is a much more fluent way of saying it, I guess. But I mean,
it doesn't mean that you feel that way about the earth. It just means that you just want to do all you can to make as much money as you can. And look, we talked these farmers into believing we were outlawing something important. They were growing hemp in Kentucky, and they were growing hemp in Indiana and Illinois and all these places. And nobody from Congress, from Washington, D.C. said, we want to outlaw hemp. Oh, no. They wanted to outlaw marijuana. And they convinced all these farmers that marijuana was bad. Marijuana led to evil. Marijuana led to deaths and all that. So everybody got all excited about marijuana and outlawed marijuana. And after they outlawed marijuana in November, they went out to put their hemp crop in the ground in April. And the federal boys showed up and said, excuse me, what are you doing? And they said, well, we're putting in our hemp crop. What do you think we're doing? They said, well, you can't do that. It's been outlawed. And they said, what do you mean it's been outlawed? They said, well, you voted out last November. They said, no, we outlawed marijuana. And they said, well, marijuana is this. They said, no, that's hemp. And the boys said, no, it's marijuana. And from here on out, we're in charge of this plant, not you.
It's just coming down to the thing where the human conscience can only take so much. What kind of suffering have we seen? What kind of suffering have we experienced?
Let me add to this. It was passed in Congress in the middle of the night when there was only like four congressmen there, 2 senators, and 1 judge. Everybody else had gone home for holiday. And, I mean, it was just passed by like, seriously, 7 or 8 people. The Hearst family and the people who were tied to the paper industry and the people who were tied to the liquor industry and the pharmaceutical industries were all there pushing for this. And they got these 7 or 8 people to sign it, get it through. And by the time it was done and over with, it was too late to undo it. Took an act of Congress.
Did they by chance do that around about Christmas time when there was like nobody there? Well, I'm shocked.
Just like they do all the other crap at the end of the year, you find out they did what? They passed what? Oh, hell no. But yeah, it was just kind of like that. I mean, the American farmer was hoodwinked. The American business person was hoodwinked. The American consumer was hoodwinked. Henry Ford was anticipating having hemp fuel and hemp cars. That's why we got the Henry Ford hemp car. And that's why, which is now being done again, where BMW and Volkswagen is now making auto bodies out of hemp fibers. Henry Ford made a whole car out of hemp fiber and nothing else. The whole auto body and the cloth for the interior and the plastic for the steering wheel and all the other. The only thing that was not hemp was the steel parts for the engine. And when you hit the back of the car, you see it. It doesn't dent. And you hear Henry Ford say, stronger than steel, yet lighter than steel, right? So, I mean, they knew it was lighter. You could get better gas mileage with it. And then the whole car itself was propelled by fuel created from hemp. So Henry Ford was all set to go into the hemp market, hemp industry, hemp but he's also created a car that ran on diesel and one that ran on gasoline because he did not know what the direction it was going to go. But he was ready for it anyway. But I can tell you, and you can now still make a whole car out of hemp, and you can run it on hemp. And when you send it to the junkyard, it will biodegrade in just a matter of a few years, not of a matter of a few centuries. And so it's really frustrating when you know this for a fact, and then you see the powers that be continue to destroy your planet, provide horrible economic situations where it's hard to establish jobs for people that want to create incomes for themselves to feed their families. And when you recognize all of that and you realize that's what's happening is because if they just change the laws on this one plant, this one little plant, if you just made it legal again, so much good would come from it. So much money would flow from pocket A to pocket B. So much good would happen to our environment. So much good would happen for our future generations. Why do we continue to beat our heads against the wall?
You know, and that's the thing. I've been dealing with psychopaths, lying, psychopathic scumbags, essentially. And they don't stop doing what they're doing just because it's wrong. They only stop when they actually feel consequences for doing what they're doing. And stoners aren't the kind of people to just rock up on you and start beating the crap out of you because you're telling lies. And so they've got nothing to really be afraid of, really.
Right. No, right. And that, too, is also frustrating. And another problem with the hemp movement that we're having is that there are a handful of people who are making it big and they're selling out. I am not going to mention names. I am not. I mean, there's a lot. But there are a lot of people who are just happy now to be franchising themselves and labeling their name and marketing their name for products and doing that type of thing as opposed to helping to end cannabis prohibition or helping other activists, as an example. And but that's their right. I mean, you're not required to help me or to help MPP or to help Normal if you happen to make $12 million a month and your cannabis dispensary. I see no reason why you should put it all into your little yacht and into your 12-bedroom home while we have people who need cannabis medicines still being arrested. And then you market to us and we give you our money to buy your product. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how it makes sense and how you are really behind us. But maybe someday I'll be able to wrestle down that demon and come to some kind of peaceful conclusion.
Yeah, I remember having conversations with some people who've got a lot of money and they're like storing stuff away and what have you, and they're trying to take care of themselves. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. However, they're preparing for like quote unquote the end, you know, like the end times and all of that kind of thing. And I was like going to them, well, what if you actually funded a whole bunch of people that are trying to prevent the end from coming, and so that way you're funding both horses. You're keeping yourself safe in case something goes bad, and you're also funding people to make things better.
Well, here I'll get close to the edge on dropping a name because I don't want to do that. But here is an example of what I'm getting at. There is a company out there that produces a soap made out of hemp, and they call it hemp soap, and they use the word hemp in the name, and they are pretty proud of the fact that they are producing a hemp product. But they won't put a marijuana leaf on their website. They won't put it on their product. They won't advertise anywhere that has a marijuana leaf. So if you're a podcast that has marijuana leaves on your website, they won't support you. They won't turn out to events that are like cannabis related, like at Hemp Fest, because they don't want to be associated with marijuana. But they certainly do enjoy taking the money that the hemp movement spends on their product.
We've just had a first super chat in here from On the Fence with Muzza, $2 New Zealand. Thank you very much. He's been very kind enough to be imploring other people to do super chatting, but none today, so he's decided to do it himself. Cheers, brother. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to get support and stuff like that, because that way you feel like you're not doing it for nothing. And just whinging and bitching on radio for your own self-gratification.
But that's some of my other bitches about the movement, is that a lack of leadership.
Yes.
Lack of leadership. And another thing is, you get a handful of people who just say, I won't work with. I won't work with. I won't work with so-and-so. I won't work. And especially now during the political turmoil that we've been dealing with for almost 8 years. Now, I'm just going to say all of this. I don't care if you're pro-Trump or anti-Trump. You get people who say, oh, I can't work with people who are anti-Trump, and they block you. And you get people who say, oh, I can't work with people who are pro-Trump, and they block you. And what this has really done is successfully take a lot of movements that were getting a lot of progress and cause those movements to divide. And now, instead of the cannabis movement working together to end cannabis prohibition and all of the states and all of the this and all of the that and around the world, you got people who say, well, I would work with him, but, he's pro-Trump. Or I would work with her, but she's anti-Trump. And I just can't work with that. I just can't work with that. Well, excuse me. We're trying to get people from behind bars. We're trying to get medication to people who are dying and don't want to get arrested for taking their medication. I don't really care who you voted for. And if you're that petty, we don't want you on the team. Go away.
Yeah. So many troublemakers. And the leadership, what is leadership? I think leadership is having ideas, actual ideas. Have you got a new idea about what to do or something like that? Or do we want to do the same thing over and over and over again that we know doesn't work?
Right. So, anyway, am I too bitchy tonight, Vinny?
No, I think you're appropriately bitchy enough, because I wanted to. I actually secretly wanted to use this show for a private bitch session myself. Anyway, so it's all worked out, I think.
Good. I just wanted to make sure, because I try to always come across loving and low key and mellow, and like I said, only because it's you. We're like brothers. I can sit and talk very, very straightforward and answer you without any hesitation.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, the loveliness of weed. And to correct my dumb ass self, we have actually had 3 super chats in today, not just the one. We had a 20 New Zealand dollar one from Adrian Sharp before. They say legalise nature. And BD over here goes 5 New Zealand dollars. Which high do you prefer, indica or sativa, indoor or outdoor grown? What do you reckon, Casper?
Well, my problem is I had to be creative. And I mean, I'm doing, newsletters and podcasts and all that kind, right? So I cannot afford to be going to sleep. And so, and indica, the way to remember it is when you smoke indica, it puts you in the couch. Right? And so I personally cannot do indicas, just because after I take, a good puff full, then, about 20 minutes later, I'm sound asleep, and that's it, But so I smoke sativas, and that keeps me awake. Yay! And creative, because at my age, I never thought I'd be saying that at my age. Seriously, that just sounds so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it just slipped out.
Well, it does. It just sounds like I need to be put into a home and retired. But at my age, I have enough problems staying awake. Seriously, I'll lie to myself and say I'm going to lay down for 30 minutes, and 4 hours later I wake up. And then I can't figure out why I can't go to bed at night and get a good night's sleep. Well, I've had 2 naps. No wonder. I'm not tired. Right? So, but, so I personally do enjoy sativas because it allows me to continue to do my editing and my writing and my reaching out on a variety of platforms in a creative way to get this message out. So, and indoor grown, always.
Yeah.
Always.
Indoors
they
always
have
the best.
more control over the environment and how it's handled, whereas outdoors you can deal with drought by accident or some kind of anything attacking it, and the potency can be changed just from a good wind that comes along and you don't expect it, whatever. But everything about hydroponic growing, whether it be tomatoes or strawberries or cannabis, it is the best. It is the best. That's why, like I said at the beginning of this, we're going to start out with tomatoes and strawberries and lettuce, because You can grow a whole crop of tomatoes, 40 acres worth of tomatoes in 60 days. And all those tomatoes, every single one of them is identical. 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 And they can be thin-skinned, low on seed, lots of juice, right? And the same with the strawberries, same with the lettuce. You can grow it quickly and grow it up. And that's also true with cannabis. You can grow a crop to flower in a very short period of time and have very good flowers, very potent material to smoke, and have full control over how the yield is picked and when it's picked and harvested. I just love it. I just love it.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing I was realizing is just the love for the plant. You know, it brings people together. Everybody's happy to thing. Whenever you go to cannabis get-togethers and things like that, whether they be meetings or conferences or something, people are cool. You know, people are open-minded, and or at least that's been my experience to a large degree. Or at least they're cooler than the alternative of going to a mainstream sort of thing.
No, well, you're right. I seldom do this, you know, reflective on my experiences and all the places I've been, but I have been blessed to have had a wonderful path in life that's led me through 3 years in Germany, and I visited Canada for a while, and I've been in Mexico, and I've been all across America and stayed in a variety of states. And I have been blessed with a lot of travel, 3 years here, 4 years there. With that said, everywhere I've gone, people who smoke the herb are really like down to earth, focused on real problems, focused on trying to make the world a better place, focused on trying to find a solution to things. And if they can't be a help, they get out of your way. People who don't smoke cannabis, they're uptight and stressed. They are just really on the edge. And oftentimes, no matter how many solutions you offer them to their problem, there still is no solution to their problem in their head. And then those who rely on liquor love to stir the shit and go out and see what they can do to piss people off. And so when you realize all of that, then you realize, well, you know, the cannabis smokers, they're at home. They're down to earth. They're focused on real problems. You know, they're focused on love. They're focused on the fact that we're only here for a short time. And well, you got to make the best of it. Seriously, Vinny, if I am blessed to live 10 more years and have good health, that's only 120 months. That's only 130 full moons, 120 rent payments, 120 light bills, and gone. Now, do I want to spend any of that fighting, being mean, being hateful, focusing on petty crap? Or should I take my time and focus on the big picture and do what I can to make the world a good place? And when I bump into people, be loving and caring and do what I can to make their world better. And if I can't make their world better, stay the fuck out of their way.
Yeah, lead, follow, or get out of the way was the old military term for it, was it? And On the Fence with Muzza has just given us another $5 super chat. He says, thank you, team, for super chatting your questions in. Sir Vinny will now read them out live on air, ladies and gentlemen. Just remember, you don't get a knighthood in New Zealand unless you sell the country out in some way. You know, like our former Prime Minister who got us $200 billion in debt became then Sir John Key, you know. And now he's hosting a Crisis X conference. Like before the Christchurch Mosque massacre, where a whole bunch of Muslims got shot up and stuff like that, there was this thing called the Crisis X conference where they had fake videos and fake bodies and all sorts of stuff to simulate a terrorist attack. And they had all the big wigs and the top tech companies and cyber security, terrorism and everything like that, all in New Zealand a couple of weeks before that assassination happened. All right. So, you know, nothing to see here, folks. Nothing to see here. And also, it's happening again very soon.
And have you noticed all that type of material has been scrubbed clean from YouTube and from most of the internet? I do go to BitChute. BitChute.com is a place where a lot of activists are now taking their programming to, because it is what YouTube used to be. But all the people who are being blackballed by YouTube are taking their content to BitChute. And there's a lot of people who are being blackballed. I tell you, my programming is called Time for Hemp. And we have people on who have organizations that have the word hemp in the organizational name. And we also, in the definition of what's on the program chat, we use the word hemp a lot. I'm just saying, and I got a channel that started on YouTube in 1999. So I also have about 3,000 one-hour programs on my channel that have the word hemp in them. Now, with that said, when you type into a YouTube search the word hemp, I pop up on page 5 or page 7. And before me, you find CNN, NBC, CBS, hemp is bad, hemp is horrible, they're finding out hemp, right? So I'm serious. So it is really important for our audience, Vinny, your audience, my audience, to support us, share us with their friends, go to our programming so that our programming gets enough hits that we can't be ignored. Because we are being, you, Vinny, me, Vinny, are being scrubbed from the internet. We're being scrubbed from YouTube. We're being scrubbed from search engines. And so they can't shut our websites down because we're paying for it when it's independent. And that's just
not yet.
right
Not yet.
face.
They're introducing new laws where they'll be able to force ISPs to close people's websites down.
Soon coming. So it's going to be more and more important right now that people support going to your show and sharing your URLs and making it easy for people to find your programming, my programming, other programming that you find on bitchute.com. It's bitchute.com. I just found them by accident because 3 different people I followed on YouTube ended up going to bitchute.com. And then I looked at their, I'm now taking my programming to bitchute.com. I'm also doing more releases just straight through my website, and to hell with YouTube. Well, that makes it harder for me to get an audience. But I still had a problem getting an audience when I was using YouTube anyway. YouTube made it hard for me to be found. So what's the difference between me? So now I just put up a little 10-minute promo on YouTube for my 30-minute promo on my website. And I put that 30-minute show up on BitChute and a couple of other places that I know aren't censoring me, and so I can be found everywhere. But I'm no longer depending on being found by a Google search engine or a YouTube search engine or a Yahoo search engine, because they're scrubbing us. They're scrubbing a lot of content. And it's amazing, they're scrubbing content on forfeiture. They're scrubbing content on cannabis, medical marijuana, and hemp. They're scrubbing content on gun rights. They're scrubbing content on false flags. They're scrubbing content on, the list is long.
What would your advice be for New Zealand, not in terms of the internet censorship, but in terms of legalizing hemp? If you had a magic wand, how would you do it? But before you answer, though, you need to understand a little bit about New Zealand. It might be difficult for an American to understand. We've got a dumbed-down population who essentially get educated by the government and then propagandized by the government on the mainstream media, so they don't really have a whole bunch of information source about anything. The free time that they do have, they usually spend drinking, having barbecues, and going to sporting events, watching movies, and watching stuff on Netflix. And they don't believe in chemtrails. They don't believe in that the government would ever do anything bad to them. And they keep voting election after election, expecting things will change. This may be hard for an American to understand the culture of New Zealand, but but if you could, give us perhaps your recommendation about what we might do with our hemp laws, now that you know the culture.
Well, fortunately, I can quote somebody on my show. Her name is May Nutt, and she had a son that had cancer, and they lived in Michigan. And he needed medical cannabis. He absolutely needed it. When he smoked it, he showed signs of improvement. He was able to deal with his pain. He was able to consume food. He was able to take his medications. He was able to have a better quality of life. And his mother was like a 65, 70-year-old blue-haired grandma who would, you'd see baking cookies. I mean, just the typical Aunt B on Mayberry. And she knew her son needed this medication, and she knew from her doctors that her son needed this medication. And as a mother, she didn't give a rat's ass about what the government had to say, legal or not. Her son was going to get this medication. And she said she even snuck it in when he was in the Veterans Hospital for a while. She snuck it in there, and nurses even turned their back because they understood that when that patient smoked that cigarette, that patient improved, came back to the room in a better mood, now looking for something to eat, now interested in taking its medication and looking for a reason to live. And she said it rained marijuana in her house. When she would go out in her backyard, people would throw an ounce or two of marijuana over her fence into her backyard. And she became known as Grandma Marijuana. And she went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, fighting on behalf of her son. And she said, that, those people who believed that the government said that this was a horrible plant, this was a bad plant, she said there was a lot of people who would believe the government no matter what they said. And she said that was a different time now. She said this is a time where people are really suffering and need this medication for a real reason. And we need to make certain that they get it without having to be arrested. Well, they changed the law in Michigan. And her son died the day they changed the law.
That happened in New Zealand. We had Rose Renton, and her son died right after they gave him the hemp stuff. It was too late.
Oh, my God. But other people, because of her fight and his fight, are now getting medical marijuana. So he did not die in vain, and she was able to celebrate his passing.
See, there's still a lot of emotion here, isn't there? It doesn't go away.
No. Excuse me, I didn't mean to.
No, I was just thinking about it myself as well. Like, I'm always either hurting or tense or upset, that kind of thing, because this stuff just really gets to me, It really does. Like, my defenses are simply down against it.
Well, and that's the reason, too, why I fight still on behalf of May Nutt. She's no longer here. So I have to make sure her message gets out. And her message is, this is no longer playtime. If you're worried about people smoking it to get high, get over it. We need to now have people have this for medication. We need to be able to grow this for paper fiber fuel. We need to create jobs with this. We need to be able to heal people with this. You need to start looking beyond your little problem with people getting high with it.
Mm. So in terms of legislation, I mean, what kind of model do you think would work best?
What Colorado's got going.
How does it work? I mean,
they don't have an overtax. It's still a little too high tax, and they're still a little stupid with it. They follow every single plant with some kind of ID. But with today's computer, you can follow every little single plant, no problem. So when you're a cannabis grower, you have to have all your plants followed, and then they test the plants if you're going to be selling it for smoke. Make sure that there's no pesticides on it or anything else that's going to be harmful. Or if it's going to be used for oil, that it's still healthy and that type of thing. And then when it finally gets to market, when it's dried and ready for sale, they test it again to make sure it's got the potency that you say it has. Because you don't want, somebody buying 10 grams of a Jack Hare and it's supposed to have, potency of, and it doesn't. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I say. I have no problem with testers, and I have no problems with people having to have their stuff licensed. That's fine. If I'm giving you my money for something, I want to make sure it's exactly what you, who I've just met, say it is. And then they use the money from it to help, the community. They help with the homeless. They help feed the people who are hungry. They help people who need medications get medications. They use the money for community outreach, and that's even better, And then they still have more than that, so they use it to fix the roads so that people can drive up and down without having their cars destroyed and their tires going flat from a pothole. So, I mean, and their benefit, they are just going, oh my God, look at all the money coming in. And so Colorado's trying to, do what they can to make it go back into the communities and go back into the pockets of the people on a local basis. Whereas like in California, they're doing what they can to put it into the coffers of the politicians and into the pockets of the state and into state agencies. And they've got so many taxes on it that, like I said, it's cheaper to buy it on the black market, which is really horrible. I mean, if you've legalized it so that people can sell it legally, and when the process along you want to end, crime around it, you would think you wouldn't be so fucking stupid that you would overtax it so that it costs so much more money that people still go, no, I'm going to buy it on the black market. Thank you, but no thank you. I mean, it's you got good pot, but you want 200 an ounce, and this guy wants 125, and it's even better shit. Sorry, no.
Yeah.
I mean, let's get smart here, people, right? So, and then there's a few places where where hemp has become legal, and they've made the licenses so that, uneven where medical cannabis and recreational cannabis is legal, they made the licenses so expensive that you've got to have you got to be part of the 1% basically, to afford to apply for a license, oftentimes to grow 40 acres for oil, or 40 acres for medicine, or 40 acres for recreational use. And then you got to jump through a lot of hoops. And even to open up a dispensary where you're selling the product, you got to be so far from a school and so far from a church and so far from another dispensary. And you can't have more dispensaries together then. And it's like, who sits and thinks of these fucking rules? I mean, jeepers. Good Lord. And so, and you do that, and you make so much problem that it's like, David down the street's got a quarter pound. I'm just going to go down there. Ciao.
So it's about having a light hand. People don't like change, essentially, but if they do, they want it to be positive, they want it to be profitable, and they don't want to see downsides, huh?
Well, we don't want to see it treated differently than any other plant. I don't see them treating tomato plants or corn plants or soybean like they treat cannabis. I don't see them, tagging every leaf, every plant. I don't see them putting taxes on top. Soybean, you make a lot of product out of soybean. It is not taxed at every level like it is on cannabis. But they recognize that cannabis is actually truly a multi-trillion-dollar crop for any country. For any country. I'm not talking about globally. I mean, globally, you can't factor in the amount of money it will create. But any country, I don't care, a small country like Germany. Germany, people think is a big country. It's not any bigger than like Rhode Island or like Ohio here in our, it's like a dinky ass little country. Just creating hemp products and hemp fuel and that kind of will make them so rich and create so many jobs that they can just be one of the world's leading economic indicators. But so that is the thing with this plant. That's why every politician and every government agency wants to get their finger on this, because they go, oh, bitches, there's a lot of money here. I want my cut.
They do want their cut. Just thinking about this as well, because the red tape, the amount of red tape that comes in that prevents independent growers from even starting a business. We heard somebody in the chat, Alison Batt, saying in some places they're charging $100,000 just to apply for a retail license.
And if you don't get your license, you don't even get that money back. That's just to apply. So you got to be somebody who can say, oh, I can afford to lose $100,000. I mean, I'll put the money down. Maybe I'll get it. Maybe I won't. Fingers crossed. Excuse me. I don't know many people who can do that. And those who can do that are like manufacturers, corporations, and, well, anyway. So, yeah, there's a lot of problem to it. And you would think that state regulators would get their head out of their tuchus and realize there's a better way of doing things where everybody can benefit. So, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Now, I don't know anybody who has to pay $100,000 to grow tomatoes. And if you don't get and if you can't grow tomatoes, they give you your money back. I mean, I don't know anybody who has to take a license out to grow corn. You might have to prove that it's not Monsanto, because Monsanto will sue your ass on anything that even hints to be theirs. But beyond that, I don't see a farmer has to get a license to grow corn, a license to grow soybean. They just turn at the end of the year, they file on their taxes. I grew soybean, and I got X amount of dollars for it, and this is my tax. I mean,
clipping the ticket, every single time somebody who does something entrepreneurial or brings some wealth into the world, there's always people who want to sit there doing nothing, just clipping the ticket in there.
Yeah, that's why I say, so if they just treat it like any other plant, that would be great. And then we'd be over. I mean, like the peanut plant produces all kinds of great medications. We know this. The soybean plant produces medications and food and fuel. We know this. Corn, you can make fuel. We know this. And then liquor, we know that. And there's a lot of things you can do a lot of things with.
Yeah.
So, however you treat them is how you need to treat cannabis for recreational and hemp for industrial. And anything short of that is just ripping off the public, ripping off mankind, and stealing from future generations.
How much anger and resentment is there? Because I recall after South Africa became, black ruled after so many years of apartheid, there was a lot of anger amongst the black population. There was a lot of killings among the whites and things like that. But I don't think that's happened directly after legalization. A whole bunch of people they run to the cops' houses and egg them or something. Who knows?
No, it's a lot like the ending of prohibition of liquor. I mean, people didn't run out in the streets and yahoo. They just went, I went down the street and bought it. I mean, there was no it has affected hemp expos, and it has affected Hemp Fest in the way that it used to be that you could go to the Hemp Fest in Seattle, and there'd be 5 stages in a big venue and a lot of people showing up. Now, a lot of people don't show up because it's legal. They don't need to show up. I mean, seriously, what are you protesting? Nothing. So all they're doing at that point now is, showing their new products. And what used to be a hemp fest and protest to a law is now a hemp fest that shows you a lot of vendor booths that are trying to hawk a lot of products.
It's kind of like a Lockheed Martin show or something like that, where you come in, you see all the new weapons.
Right. So yeah, at the hemp fest, you used to show up and meet MPP and meet Normal and all these organizations that are working hard in the community to change the law and get an initiative and get this on the ballot. Now you meet a lot of companies who are putting out this new hemp oil product or putting out these new edible brownies or this new hemp clothing, or we got something that's a hemp collar for the dog, or we got something for your little kids. And everywhere you go, we got little marijuana leaves on this and little marijuana leaves on that. You want to buy it $30, $40, $100, and it's like a hawk. It's like I don't know. It turns into
it's a fucking gold rush.
Turns into a seller's carnival, a flea market.
And it sounds like a gold rush.
Yeah, and then you get charged to go into them as well. So they want to charge you $50 or $100 or $200 to walk through all that crap. So they want you to pay to go into this festival where all these people are going to show you all these products they want you to buy.
If they turn it into lots of free samples and lots of great bands and things like that, as well as a place to shop, or even just have the frickin' stalls on the outside of the venue, selling to
Right.
people walking by the goddamn stadium
Right.
to
But stop
fund
me if
the
I'm
bloody
lying.
festival.
But stop me if I'm lying. I mean, have you seen anything different at the hemp expos these days or the hemp fest these days? Every time you show up, isn't somebody trying to sell you a bong or a pipe or a vaporizer or a hemp edible or a hemp oil or a hemp T-shirt or a hemp bracelet or please buy this, right? Right?
No,
Stop me
no,
if
I
I'm
mean,
lying.
I haven't so much seen that because it's not legal here yet.
Oh,
So
oh,
we're still in protest mode.
oh, well, that's coming. That's coming. Now you know what's coming. So once it comes legal, just realize, the festivals are over. Get your gears reorganized because no one wants to go and pay to be sold to. Just saying.
I wonder if do people get jaded when that happened, sort of lose motivation.
They do. They do. And they get frustrated too. Because now that it's also illegal, there are some places, like in Seattle, you're not allowed to put a marijuana leaf in your advertising or anywhere in your business brochures or anywhere that you, like even an employee handbook. You cannot put a marijuana leaf in there in the state of Washington and the state of California. And I think I don't know, Ohio maybe, and which is stupid. It's like saying you got maple syrup and you can't put a maple leaf on the damn thing. Hello? I mean, this is really stupid. All right. And they can't show their product being used to grow cannabis. They can't have their product being used to cannabis flower or picking or even smoking cannabis. If you got a cannabis pipe, a marijuana bong, or a vaporizer, it's got to be using oil, but you can't be cannabis oil in your advertising. All right. So that's why I said my network, Time for Hemp, we don't care if you use leaves. We don't care if you show your product being used to grow marijuana or to smoke it because we're kind of like a cable. We're kind of like a global cable broadcasting network, and no one regulates me.
Hey, well, speaking of which, we've got Alan Kropp in the chat room here. He says they advertise on the radio here. He says he's in Washington State.
Oh, they can advertise. They just can't put a marijuana leaf in their advertising. And that frustrates a lot of the people who own a cannabis business. They can't show a cannabis leaf. It's like the Seattle Hemp Fest could not show a marijuana leaf in its brochures, its flyers, its advertising, its TV advertising. Not in the state of Washington anyway. And in California, if you own a cannabis dispensary, you can say it's a cannabis dispensary and you can show a green cross, but you cannot show a leaf in your advertising or your neon sign or in your marketing. If you do, it's against the law. Now, there's a lot of people who do because there's so many people, it's hard to stop it, right? Hard to enforce, right? But that is written into their statutes. I mean, so there's a lot of stupidity still around this plant in states that have legalized it.
Do you feel, as a cannabis activist, I mean, you've been doing this for decades now, do you feel that once it's been legalized and stuff like that, that you're still fighting to get all the stupid parts of the legalization removed?
Yeah, well, some of them, yeah, like the ones we've just been talking about, because and that mostly just comes from greed. Because honestly, the truth about cannabis is the kind of information that anybody with the IQ of a rock can understand. Meaning, any human being that first hears this information never unlearns it. So it is easy once you educate people to make changes in jobs and reintroducing it as a place to buy a cannabis shop down the street where you can buy different types of cannabis. I mean, it makes sense to them at that point. It's like liquor. It's like buying different types of tomato sauce. I mean, you explain it once and most human beings get it. It's just the politicians who are hell-bent on trying to make a law out of this. I mean, the only reason why sugar is not outlawed is because they would be assassinated, whoever did that, because sugar is so damn addicting. But it was whoever outlawed cannabis was a clever motherfucker because it was a plant that could be used for anything and everything. And what it did is it took the wealth out of the farmer's pocket. Before cannabis was outlawed, Kentucky in our United States, Kentucky, the state of Kentucky, was one of the wealthiest, they called them commonwealths, in the United States. It had the most money and resources. It had the highest education level. More people graduated. It had less problems with poverty on every market. When they outlawed cannabis, within 16 months, Kentucky went from being the wealthiest commonwealth in America to the poorest. And it remained the poorest for the next 50 years, because all those farmers were left with just tobacco and corn and soybean to sell.
And I got a joke about that.
And when you take cannabis out of their garden, when cannabis was outlawed, we lost 10% of our topsoil all across America.
Got a joke about that.
To the wind. I mean, the wind just blew it away. And so because of that, we lost a lot of good soil. And cannabis goes deep into the ground, and it is a great way to re-stimulate the nutrients all the way down into the ground, farther than any other plant. So it even caused us to have less yield on our other plants, because our other plants were not getting all the nutrients that they needed.
Now, Kentucky, after that happened, they invented the toothbrush. And you know it was invented in Kentucky. You know why? Because if it was invented anywhere else, it would have been called the teeth brush.
Okay.
Little toothless Kentucky joke for you there, ladies and gentlemen, on the Vinny Eastwood Show. It is the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed?
But isn't that interesting? All the money that was in Kentucky transferred into the pocket of the petrochemical companies, the pharmaceutical companies, leaving the farmers unable to pay their bills.
And now farms are disappearing all across the United States. Suicides are mortgage foreclosures, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, that's been going on for 40 years now.
Massive corporate monopolies.
Corporations have been buying up over and over and over. And had it not been for outlawing hemp, they couldn't have done it. I mean, any farmer who could grow 40 acres of hemp would be able to pay all of his bills, or her bills, depending on, right. And so they would never had to worry about losing your farm. You know, if you grew corn and didn't make it, grew soybean and didn't make it, next year put in a crop of hemp or a crop of cannabis for recreational use, and at the end of your harvest season, you're going to make all your bills. You don't have to worry about being bought out or the bank taking your property because you couldn't make your bills.
There's a lot of stress on people as well. I mean, my sister's husband's still farming cattle here in New Zealand, and I'm just worried about, Agenda 21 and all of these other big plans to just get people off the land and just to collapse farming and monopolize the living hell out of it. It's concerning to me.
Yeah, and it is frustrating to see it happen here. And again, you would think people who were working hard to end cannabis prohibition would strive to make certain that that did not happen to them, but they are sometimes more than happy to be bought out. And so, like I said, we've had a lot of people who have just sold out.
Yeah. Including me. Donate to the Vinny Eastwood Show, ladies and gentlemen. Kiwi Bank, PayPal, and Patreon are the options, and there's links in the description there. My very special guest right now is Casper Leitch from Time for Hemp. Decades of cannabis activism, so much things. I was just thinking about you saying 3,000 interviews or videos that you've done on your old channel, and it's getting up to about 4,000 for me. But I haven't been covering just hemp. And believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I might have been covering all sorts of shit on this fucking channel for a long, long time. But there is just as much to know just about hemp, just about cannabis, because it's just such a huge freaking topic. It's almost difficult to even give somebody an overview. It's almost like it involves everything.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, as I progressed in this movement. When I first met Jack Hare, I was just someone who liked to get high. I mean, straight up, I just liked to get high. I was doing work in a science supply shop, and he came in to get banners made that said that said hemp for paper. Another banner said hemp for fuel, and marijuana prohibition. He wanted these big banners because he was going to go on the road to promote his book. And my boss, who was actually younger than me, came over and said, "Casper, these are your people." What do you mean? He said, "Well, they're pot smokers." And my boss didn't smoke pot. He says, "I'll let you deal with them." So when I got done dealing with them, I went back and gave my boss a prepaid check from Jack for $4,728 and said to my boss, "How does it feel to make you know that marijuana is paying your rent on this business this month?" This guy wants this done in 3 weeks. I told him it would be. Well, Jack called in occasionally. He liked my voice on the phone. He kept trying to bug me to go to work for him. And I wouldn't do it because I liked my job. And he sent somebody out one day to pick me up, take me out to where he lived. And I saw what he was doing, and I got roped into being a hemp activist. So that's how I got started, if anybody's really curious. But it's Jack Hare who began all this. And when he taught me that marijuana was more than just getting high, I was absolutely dumbstruck. I had never heard of any plant, any one single plant that actually produced all these different types of fibers for clothing and for tablecloths and for hemp cells and for rope. That made all these different types of paper, from real thin paper to really heavy paper, and that because of this hemp paper we had our books written on, our books lasted longer, and all of our history and all of our information being passed from one generation to the other was passed because it lasted on hemp paper. It lasted longer than any type of paper that was made. And I never knew that. I didn't know that you could pay your taxes with hemp because the government considered it to be such a valuable thing. I had no clue that Abraham Lincoln used it as oil in his lamp to read his book at night. I did not know you could use this for oil. I had no idea that this one plant fed an entire continent during a famine, a drought, where they almost died. And because they were able to grow hemp and eat hemp porridge, they were able to survive a famine. That's amazing. This one plant made medications that made you feel better, made you stronger, made you healthier. And some asshole outlawed it. That made no sense to me. And then you realize all the people who are being put behind bars for this wonderful plant that makes all of these things. And all these people who can't have their medications because all these people over here have the patents on it and they're making money off of it, and they'll be damned if you're going to make any money off of it if they don't. And they're going to arrest you if you try, bitches, so don't even think about it. And that's even more frustrating. And then after you learn all of that, after I worked with Jack, I couldn't get a job anywhere else. It was difficult because of what you said about being an activist until you die. I go into places to work where they want to, because of my work with an author or my work as something, an activist in an organization. They were interested in me as an advisor or whatever. Can I come in and talk to them? And as soon as somebody would say I had to take a piss test, and I said, well, that's fine. I'm going to test positive for cannabis, but nothing else. And they would say to me, well, then we can't hire you. I would be on my soapbox. And I would be going paper, fiber, fuel, this is stupid. And they would finally go, well, thank you very much. If we ever think we need someone like you, we'll try to find somebody else. Goodbye. So I never could get a real job because I learned the truth. And I wouldn't shut the fuck up, straight up. And it's led to me being a lifelong activist. And along the way, people have donated, and they have been sponsors. It's just been these last few years when they got legal, and people didn't see the need now to go to a niche broadcast to sell their niche product because they're no longer a niche.
Yeah. Well, as long as they're not a snitch.
Right.
Yeah. Snitches get stitches, ladies and gentlemen. That is the code. Amazing how people turn on each other as well. I recall interviewing Barry Cooper, great guy. He's talking about for every person you tell about your grow, the chance for getting busted goes up 10%. You tell 10 people about your grow, you're getting busted.
Right. No, right.
And it's a there's infighting, there's these personality clashes, and there's also this kind of like vengeful nature. In fact, Marky Herbert, I invited her on the show today. She hasn't been able to come on yet. She had her relatives come and steal all her plants that she was using for making medicine for sick people in her community.
No, there is a lot of that, and there's a lot of occasionally here in Oregon, you'll hear a patient say, my grower left with my medicine, and that really is messed up. I mean, but that's chalked up to human nature. You're going to find greed in every business. I mean, if you were selling candy, you're going to find somebody who went home with all the Hershey bars. Or if you were selling, Halloween masks, somebody went home with all the Casper masks. Right. So anywhere you look, there's bad in every business. So you just have to overlook that. And I've learned now it's worked for me. I know it's weird. My sister taught me when I was a kid about a thing called karma. And I thought she was silly. She always told me, what you put out, you get back. You be careful what you say and do. And even though I always thought she was silly, I always kind of carried that kind of to heart. And I always tried to act in love and act in comedy and act in kind and act in peace. And now that I'm at the end of my road, everybody I meet, I'm blessed. It meets me in comedy, meets me in love, and meets me in peace. So I just tell people straight up right here, right now, no matter what fight you're fighting, if you want to fight a fight with peace, you can do it. I have been blessed with a lot of love at every step, and a lot of protection and a lot of good care. So, but a lot of it came because I had to love first. I had to crack the first joke. I mean, it was my option to be an asshole or to be nice, and I chose to be nice. And I'm so glad that when I was 19 and thought I knew everything, that now that I'm 65 and realize I don't know nothing, that I didn't put my head so far up my tuchus that I couldn't see straight.
Isn't that a great lesson for everybody as well, is that we're ignorant. I realized that the other day. I was thinking to myself, hey, Vinny, you're actually quite ignorant about a lot of things that go on this planet that you have no idea about yet and you never experienced before. Stop acting like you know everything. Stop being so sure of yourself.
Oh, I had all the answers when I was 22, and I'll sit you down and tell you all your problems, and I'll give you all your solutions, and that's that. Why was I a dumbass?
Yeah, I remember when I was 24 and I got like 20 grand and I thought I could retire.
Yeah. And I tell you, now that I'm 65, nothing makes any sense. I can't figure out the evil in this world. I can't figure out when I open up Yahoo News, I see something horrible that somebody did to somebody else or somebody did to an animal. And it's just, I sometimes cry over people I've never met because of all the pain and grief in this planet. And it blows my mind completely. And I can't make any sense of it on any level. And the older I get, the more confused I get. And the less answers I have, the more I know I gotta learn.
Which is why there's so many productive radio shows to be had out there, ladies and gentlemen. When you don't think you know what's going on, you find out.
Cross your fingers, right?
Yeah. If you think you know what's going on, you don't find out shit.
Also, a thing that's blown my mind completely is, I drank liquor when I was a kid, and I was pretty hard on my body, and I took a lot of chances. I mean, I didn't literally jump in front of a train when it was moving, but there's a lot of times you would have thought, right, that I should have been dead, right? I'm near death. And then here I am still, right? And I look back at some of my friends who've passed away when they were 40, or like Michelle Rainey when she was 31, who are no longer here. They passed away at 55 or 58. And I'm still kicking, and I'm just like this old crotchety old piece of crap. And I'm still here. And all these other wonderful people, they're gone. I don't understand that either, but I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful. every day I wake up that I can, keep getting out there and trying to change these laws someplace, and that there's a reason for me. I got a dog that wants me to walk it around the neighborhood. I got people who need medical cannabis who are still living someplace where it's outlawed. There are farmers who still want to grow industrial hemp that need to have a message from my broadcast put into their politicians' ears. So there's still a reason for me to get out of bed. That's cool.
And speaking of which, we've got Danny Romero in the chat room. He says, great show, guys.
Oh, I love Danny. I've missed him. I'm glad he's listening, and I'm glad he's still around. It's wonderful that he's getting the network back together and up and kicking. So I miss hearing his voice in my ear at the beginning of every broadcast. So
yeah,
give me my love.
Well, we'll be getting that puppy up around about next week, I think. I've got to do some tests with Danny so we can get all the audio and everything sorted out.
He's one of the reasons my life has been so good, He really believed in Time for Hemp more than I did. I mean, he bugged me more than anybody to take my show to his network. I kept saying, who want to listen to me? I'm just some old geezer. And he was really adamant that, the guests that I had and the things we were saying would be a benefit to his audience. So he finally pushed me to do Time for Hemp radio on his broadcast. And I was pretty cranky about it at first. I was like a little diva. And he put up with that shit. And it wasn't until I got my head out of him, I took us down the road and started realizing what all it took to do it, broadcast, that I become a little easier to get along with. And by the time life caused Danny's path to go to different directions, he and I were grand friends. And I learned everything that I'm doing at my timeforhemp.news website from being on Danny's show. I mean, I learned everything that they did. And I knew that if I didn't continue it in some way, all that audience was going to die away. And all that information was no longer going to be heard. And I had to figure out how to keep the series going, just like you did. You kept your series going so that your audience could continue to get the information you had to broadcast. And so had it not been for Danny and his young son, Danny, and his other son, who really busted their ass to build American Freedom Radio, there would be no Time for Hemp. There would not be a Time for Hemp on iHeartRadio. There would not be a Time for Hemp on Roku TV. There would not be a Time for Hemp anywhere. I would have just finally gave up. So I owe a lot to Danny Romero, whether he knows it or not. I do. So anyway, he blessed my life. He turned my path around, put me on a direction that I never thought I'd be going, and put me onto a career path. So had it not been for Danny, thank you, Danny, I wouldn't still be doing these radio shows and all that groovy stuff. So,
yeah. Well, I was originally on American Freedom Radio with a co-host, and then they fired the co-host and gave me the show. So thanks, Danny. There would be no Vinny Eastwood Show without American Freedom Radio.
Right. And I know Terry Joyce is on his network, so
yeah.
Again, if you'd like to find somebody to fit Time for Hemp back into his network, because I don't know what to do right now. I'm kind of like at a sideways. I've got this. People say I'm sitting on a gold mine. I got to figure out how to get the gold out of the mine. Which is that their way of telling me to get my head out of my butt? I don't know, but.
I think that's a sign for us to not be doing so much alone and actually get a team around us that are actually working on the same thing as well, because I feel it's very demotivating when you have to do everything by yourself, that kind of thing. It's great to have just a voice in your ear just to say keep going.
Well, everything that's on American Freedom Radio could suddenly end up on iHeartRadio and on Roku TV. We can figure out how to make it all happen. I just need sponsors. I'm blessed so far. I have no debt to Time for Hemp. So all we need to do is find some people to help me run it. It's just too big for me to handle. We can do like what you're doing now, these little video broadcasts. We can do add 5 or 10 more people to it. I'm on a Roku network where we can slice it up into different channels like you do like a regular cable network. We can do simulcast on iHeartRadio and Tumblr, so we can then, promote to organizations that are doing expos or whatever. We let our crew show up, but it takes equipment and it takes team. Now, I have been by myself producing 3 audio shows, 2 video shows, a monthly newsletter, daily, news blogs, and oh my God, and it's exasperating me, and and I'm not making anything out of it but a heartburn. So I'm changing laws, so that matters. But if I don't know, I'm in a position where I need help, but I don't know what kind of help I need. But I know if I get the right kind of help, I can grow exponentially.
That's right. So what I asked for when I first started out doing this is for people to start up automatic payments into my bank account, because ultimately, if you're an activist, you always need money, but you don't always have a chance to ask for it. And even when you do ask for it, maybe the person who would have been willing to give it to you doesn't hear you. So I've asked, and I've been supported by automatic payments from New Zealanders and from people all around the world through the PayPal automatic payments and Patreon, and that allows me to get money in on a regular basis without actually having to work for it on the day, which is really, really helpful, because some days you just don't feel like it, and if you do it, you sometimes burn yourself out, and then you can't do it for days, weeks,
Bingo. That's part of it. To do sales is really hard on me, and then and in the cannabis movement, everybody who's sold to the cannabis movement has told me, and it's true, before you can close any sale, you got to call them back 6 or 8 times. In the real world, if you're selling, stock markets or candy bars or, T-shirts, you can usually close the deal in 3 or 4 calls or know to go on. And so it's more difficult to sell to the cannabis movement, for one. So that's very frustrating. And two, after you get a lot of no's, it's very difficult to go to the creative aspect and put together a kick-ass show that people are going to love, because you've just been told by 100 people they don't love what you do enough to advertise on your network. Right? So if people don't love what you do enough to support you, it's kind of hard to go and do a show, right? I mean, it's hard to cut the show and edit the show and get the questions and get the artwork and get it promoted and get enthused about it, but that's just part of sales. I mean, for every yes, you've got 100 no's. But I can't do sales and creativity. I either do one or the other. So I'm either selling something, but I'm not making new product, so why make sales? But I'm making new product, but to do product, I got to have sponsors.
Well, I was talking about this earlier today with a couple of mates of mine, is that it's almost like the New World Order's played game theory out, and they figured every single possible thing we could possibly try to unenslave ourselves, and they've put barriers in the way there.
Yeah. Now what I'm doing, I'm so excited. I'm really excited. There's a group of people in Tucson, Arizona, where I once lived before, and if you ever would have said to me, Casper, you're moving back to Tucson, I would have laughed at you. Back to Indiana, yay. Back to California, sure. Back to Germany, maybe. Tucson. But they got 10 acres down there. And like I said, we're going to kick off with a hydroponic farm full of veggies. And when we can, we're going to turn it into a cannabis farm. And then I'm going to be able to maybe help unenslave a group of people and use the funding from that to support my little work at Time for Hemp. I've also tried to make everything on my website affiliate marketing, and I've even found a new software program that allows me to do what YouTube does. You go to YouTube and you watch a video, a little link pops up and you click on it, you go to it, right? Well, now I pick the links. So if you're talking about medical cannabis and the cannabinoid system, I can have it go to a link on Amazon about the cannabinoid system, and it's an affiliate link that if you buy that book, I get 7% or I get 8%, right? So hopefully, in time, I'll start getting enough affiliate sales that I won't have to rely on sponsors, because I really hate calling up people and begging to have them advertise on my show and say, well, I got 50,000 people that follow me on Twitter, which I do, or I reach 180,000 people on Facebook, which I do. And I get 170,000 people on Pinterest a month, which I do, and we're on, Reddit, we're on SoundCloud, which we are, we're on iHeart, which I am. But and I hate having. And after I say all that, then they go, well, I don't think you're still worth it. It's like, really? And everybody in my audience is focused on cannabis. And if you're selling to the cannabis movement, you still don't want to shell out for some dough to help support what we're doing. And everything that you spend on us is tax write-off. So you use Uncle Sam's money to fight Uncle Sam, and you can't figure that that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's like being an ancient man and being able to see how to create a wheel. And everybody else is like, what do I need that for? I've got feet. It's like, dude, you don't see the possibilities here.
Exactly. And because along the way, I pioneered all this crap by accident. I mean, I didn't set out to do this as a pioneer. I mean, it's been difficult. It's cost me a lot of money. It's cost me a lot of friends. It's cost me a lot to do what I'm doing. But I said I am a pioneer. So that in itself is a plus to, hitch your horse to my wagon. And we got a lot of great content, a lot of credibility. And so you would think that would also be of importance to people out there who are looking to reach an audience focused on cannabis. But everybody wants it for free. And Jack wasn't bullshitting when he said the cannabis movement's like a church. They don't want to pay for anything. They don't mind donating once in a while, but they want the music for free. They want the Bible for free. They want the pews to set up for free. They want the church, when they walk into it, already paid for. They want the sidewalks paved. They want the parking lot paved. And if they donate or not, they don't care. They're there to get the word, the message. And it's like that. It's very frustrating. Like I said, if I was an abortion activist, pro or con, there'd be money coming over my fence, corporate money coming into my bank account. People would want to know, how can I donate? You're anti-abortion or you're pro-abortion, and I love what you're doing, and I love your cause. Tell them that you're trying to end marijuana prohibition, and they say, see ya, have fun getting high, motherfucker, good luck.
Well, just to spite your face there, we've got 10 Canadian dollars being donated in here by Alison Bat. She asks, what are the top 3 things you would like to achieve, Casper?
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much, Alison, for that 10 Canadian dollars, by the way.
Yeah. Number 1 is I'd like to find some way to make timeforhemp.news stay on the internet even after I kick the bucket. Only because, and if you listen to any of my shows, I'm chatty on your broadcast tonight, right? I might be talking too much, I don't know. But if you listen to my shows, I shut the fuck up. And I let my guests talk. So if you go through my archives, I've got a lot of important guests who are no longer here. Like Michelle Rady, as an example, who died at age 31, who used cannabis oil to help with her chemo, to help with her tumors, to help with her pain, to help her get through dying. All right? Now, that's important. That's an important message for someone to hear. And I promised her I would get that message into as many ears as I could. Now, I would think that could be important to somebody 40 years down the road. And so I want to find some way to keep their message alive long after I'm dead. That's number 1. Number 2, I would love to find some way to make lives for pets wonderful. It grieves me when I turn on the internet and I see an animal's been mistreated. And I'm not going to go through all the listings, but we've all seen them. And we've all seen a lot of heartbreaking situations for dogs and cats and a variety of creatures that really shouldn't be. And so I would like to find some way to make a better life for our pets. That would be the second thing. And then the third thing I'd like to leave behind is laughter. Some sort of material on audio or video where when people watch it, they laugh their fucking ass off so hard they fall out of their chair. Seriously. I've told my sister that when I kick the bucket to hire a comedian to come in and do the eulogy. Straight out. And to do a good 20 minutes on death and make it as fucking funny as you can and make sure everybody's laughing so hard that they're crying. That's what I want. I want to leave laughter in this world. So there you go. Those are my top 3 things.
Beautiful, beautiful. What was my top 3 things? Well, a lot of the things that I wanted to achieve were after I was dead, and it seems like those were the things that you wanted to achieve as well. Later in life, the things that you really want to achieve are the things that are permanent, the things that are there regardless of whether or not you are.
Right.
And it's similar for this channel and stuff like that. I just hope it never gets deleted, because then it's all gone. That kind of thing, all this work. There's so many great shows that have been done that are still timeless. They're relevant even today. They'll be relevant in 100 years' time, and having that archived and be able to be easily searchable and that kind of thing for people, and have all the descriptions and all the tags and all of that kind of stuff, the whole 9 yards for the whole spectrum of shows that we've done. That would be amazing.
And then as I go through my own library, because a lot of it was focused on medical, there's a lot of really heart-wrenching stories of either veterans who have come back without legs who use this, or without arms, or spouses whose husbands or wives died of cancer or some kind of horrific disease, and because of cannabis, they were able to deal with it. And that when they're telling you this on this show, they're telling you this hoping that somebody hears it. And oftentimes, like on Michelle Rainey, it was her last message. It was the last thing she had to say to the whole world. And here they are dying of cancer, dealing with pain, dealing with medications, dealing with all kinds of crap. And they take time out to talk to the world about what they're going through, hoping that somebody will benefit from what they're dealing with and how they're dealing with it. And so that is sometimes difficult for me when I'm working with my material.
I remember Evelyn Gilbert, she was an activist on this show, and Penny Bright as well. Interviewed them maybe 150 times between them over a number of years. And when they died, and they both died, and they were the 2 biggest female activists that were regulars on the show, and they died within a year of each other, that kind of thing. That was a huge blow to me. And now that the only real record of their existence is on this channel, I've got 2 playlists there, Rip Penny Bright and Rip Evelyn Gilbert, and I hope you guys get a chance to check it out if you're curious.
Funny you say that, too, because I've heard from families, I'm not going to list them, but I've heard from a handful of families over the years that, hey, my dad was on your show, and because of that, I'm able to hear my dad's voice when I want to. Or my mom was a guest on your show. Now that she's gone, anytime I want to hear her wisdom, I can listen to your broadcast. Thank you for keeping it up there for other people to learn from my mom or learn from my dad. So, yeah, I've gotten kudos.
Somebody once said that when you die, everything you know is gone. And when everybody who's ever known you dies, the living memory of you dies with them. So that's why it's so important to catalog all this stuff for future generations, I mean, we can't put it into stone tablets and things like that. It's all digital. So one EMP blast.
No, it's true. And I know I use Michelle Rainey often. She was 31 when she died, but like Gateway Galbraith as an example, always wanted to have the message, hemp is fuel, in front of people's faces as much as possible. And he preached that a lot on my broadcast year after year. And when he died, I still recut his show and put it out as if it's new for someone to still learn from. So it's my job to carry that message onto another generation. And I carry that weight significantly. I know I'm pretty flippant at time and I'm kind of grumpy, but one of the things that I do carry with a lot of weight is my promise to my guests to get their message out and to make sure that they're always heard.
I feel kind of neglectful about it as well, because it's like, I'm alive, they're not. I'm still trying to live my life. They've already lived theirs. And how much time do I take out of my time while I'm alive trying to spread what they were talking about while they were alive? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I do. And that was another aspect of it. Michelle Rainey, up until she died, was a hemp activist. She was showing up at hemp events. She was showing up at marijuana marches. She was showing up at protests. She chained herself literally to doors. She handcuffed herself to chairs and offices right up to about 3 months before she passed away. I mean, and then, in the hospital, she was donating out of her paychecks, to hemp organizations and to she donated to my broadcast. She donated to Normal to help get the message out. And then when she died, she left in her will anything of any value went to a hemp organization there in Canada to help end cannabis prohibition. Now, how do you respond to someone like that? My God, 31 years old. I mean, jeepers. What an example, right?
Well, it's about obligation, I think, because it's like the whole concept that it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes an entire community to get truth out, I heard this person say this one thing one time, oh, you don't need to stick up for the truth, it stands on itself. Fucking bullshit! The
Yeah,
truth
exactly.
needs to be stood up for all the fucking time, as loudly and proudly as humanly fucking possible.
Well, I can tell you though, Vinny, um, you can't do it by yourself. I'm just gonna let this in and out. Everybody has health problems, so sometimes I can get in somebody's way, and it did slow time for hemp broadcasting down in some ways. And now that I'm older as well, I don't have the energy that I used to have. I've got to admit this and deal with it. And there are times when I can no longer fight. I can no longer give a shit. I can no longer do any more. I set my own deadlines and I miss them because I'm just too tired. I'm too worn out. I really am tired from the fight. And I can tell you, no matter who you are, you finally just
The
you
candle
either get
burns out.
help, you either get help where it goes. I mean, I don't know, you either get help where it goes. So that's all I can say. I don't know how much longer time for him will be up on the net. There's only so much time I can put into it. So much of my own personal resources I can continue to bury into it before we get people to go, oh my God, this is a treasure trove of information that must never die.
And that was the thing I was thinking about legacy. A lot of people have, charged me with, keeping their legacy and stuff like that alive. And I'm just like, but once you're gone, man. I mean, that's the real problematic. They're not there to help you. You can't ask them questions. You can't ask them for a hand or a handout when you need it. That kind of thing. It's extremely tough doing this job. But I think it was like what was it, the Spielberg film The Post, that the newspapers are the first draft of history. And I was thinking that as talk radio show hosts and YouTubers and stuff like that, we are the new first drafters of history. We are the ones who tell people like it is, when it happens, and ultimately the rest of the time we don't get heard because people do not want to hear the truth. People do not want to fight. They don't want to sacrifice what needs to be sacrificed in order to get the job done. And we fail ourselves and our bodies fail us, and we are essentially eclipsed by failure to a large degree every day that we haven't achieved exactly what we set out to achieve. And that's what I mean by attrition. It's very, very hard to see the bright side when you've been through so much dark.
Now, I have been so blessed too, as well, to have the mama that I had, because let me say this. My mama was a suffering jet at so many levels. First of all, when my mom started working as an insurance salesperson, she brought home a really fat paycheck. And my dad said to her, you got to quit your job. And she said, why? And he said, because no woman of mine is going to earn more money than me. If you ever bring home a bigger paycheck than me again, you got to quit your job. So my mom hid a lot of her money into her own private accounts. And one day she came home and told my daddy she just bought the business that she used to work for. And in the process, she became one of the first females in our city of Muncie, Indiana, to be a business owner. And along the way, because my dad was such a pain in the ass to get along with, She wanted to get out of the house, and her way of getting out of the house was to be a politician. And she ended up being president of the county council, which means in our city and state, she had more power than the mayor because the city lies within the county. And my mama was the president of the county council. And she was the first female to be the president of the county council in the history of Delaware County. So my mom went out and fought for women's rights and taught me to stand up for who the hell I am, because she also knew she had a gay son, and she did not want me to be ashamed of who I was born as. And she always said, it was other people's problem, not mine. Just keep on moving. So she taught me to be an activist long before I became a hemp activist. And I learned to deal with watching what you say before you say it. That's why I say, normally I'm not this candid with interviews. I don't piss about the movement. I don't talk about how the leaders are not getting along and how advertising sucks. That sounds like I'm having a temper tantrum and a hissy fit and feeling sorry for me. And who wants to hear that shit? And you're right. I try to be quiet when I do my interviews so that hopefully, when people tune in and listen to me, anytime they hear me, they're either learning something that's good for them or they're laughing their ass off because I'm just a good comic. Otherwise, I need to shut up.
Yeah, that's about the size of it, isn't it? If you're not contributing something when your mouth is open that is good, keep it shut. You might learn something.
Right? So I have always tried to be that way for my legacy. And I really, when you go through any of my interviews, I try to make it so that my joint host is the most asking the most questions, and my guest has the spotlight. And I just act as an announcer. We're going to commercial, we're back from commercial, or if there's dead air, if they suddenly freeze up, then I just jump in with something silly. But I really try. I really do. I want to leave behind something smart or something funny. So when people tune in and listen to anything that I did, it was at least worth their time.
Casper Leitch, timeforhemp.news is the website, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much, Casper, for coming on the show today. Do you have any blatant self-promotion you'd like to spill on us?
Just please check out timeforhemp.news a lot, because I'm no longer relying as much on Facebook and Twitter and so on to promote the website, just because they're scrubbing us out and they're making it difficult to be found. So I'm tired of fighting them because they win. They own the platform. But if you go to timeforhemp.news and check our blogs a lot, and check out our videos a lot, next week, I'm going to be releasing new videos and new audio programming. In a couple of days at timeforhemp.news, I'll have a new newsletter up on the homepage, and we're going to start releasing new content on hopefully a regular basis again. But as a one-man show, sometimes I get 6 weeks on and 6 weeks off. I don't know. But come to timeforhemp.news. Share us with your friends. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Casper. And I think every country that hasn't got cannabis legalized certainly has a lot to learn from your experience. And, of course, the experience of so many other cannabis activists around the world, because ultimately it is their sacrifices and it is their hardship that has actually brought light to these issues, because it's not about the dollar signs. That doesn't convince people. It's not about the science. That doesn't convince people. It's about heart. What hurt somebody and what made that pain stop. That is what convinces people that cannabis is a good thing, ladies and gentlemen. The heart. Shoot for it, and hopefully it will change. Thank you very much for listening to the Vinny Eastwood Show, the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't make it fun. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood Show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state is Vinny's jokes. And hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, you can leave a like on this thing. Apparently, 6 assholes gave us a dislike while we were in the middle of the show, Casper. So, ladies and gentlemen, do your job and do some spectral anomaly statistical magic and put as many likes on this thing as you can so that the percentage goes up of likes versus dislike ratio of some description. I can understand why people hate me and hate hemp and stuff like that, but for God's sake, just like the video anyway. And also, thank you so much to my Patreons. Patreon payout this month was biggest one we've ever had. Just had 9 automatic payments, giving a little chip into the Kiwi Bank yesterday, and 4 this morning as well, ladies and gentlemen. So really, really appreciate all my Kiwi brethren donating regularly into that Kiwi Bank account. All the links and numbers and things like that are in the description. Again, thank you very much, and we'll see you again sometime, folks.
Yeah.